quick introduction thingy for this week's video. We are talking about spells, features. Are they features? They're just feats, right? Yeah. Why did I say features? That's weird. Spells, feats. Go intro. And we're back. Thanks, Future Mitchell, once again. Yeah, thanks once again. All right. So this week, basically, I just have... I've got the PHB open to where the feats section is, and I have Xanathar's open to where the racial feats section is, because they're pretty much the only feats. There's a few Unearthed Arcana ones, but I don't really want to roll into too many of those because a lot of them, because they're not official content yet, they're very subject to change with how they would actually work anyway. So I prefer to just talk about the ones that actually exist, and then also maybe some house rulings or home rulings on like ways we actually change the feats a little bit sometimes, depending on how they are, because some of them, you know, aren't that great. So, hey, what's going on, Emily? Thank you for dropping in. All right, so I have the PHB open. It is page 165 for everybody playing at home. And the feats start in alphabetical order, so it's very easy to follow along in the podcast. So there's a few erratas that I have in my PDF that actually show like what the errata to the feat has been clarified as. So let's just start from the start, I guess. So the first one is the alert feat, which gives you a bonus to initiative, which is pretty cool. +5 bonus to initiative, which is like massive. You can't be surprised when you're conscious, and other creatures don't get advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being hidden from you, which is pretty... Yeah, it's been changed to other creatures don't gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you, not necessarily being hidden. So if you don't see them, they can't gain advantage. They don't just have to be hidden. You just, yeah. It's a bit...
If they didn't change it, there could be this weird situation where you walk into a room, fail a simple perception roll to see them.
Yeah.
But they're not hidden because they're not hiding.
No, they're not hiding. You just didn't see them. I mean,
especially at low levels, you can roll them.
This is something about D&D where semantics really come into play.
And like, as a DM, I feel like you kind of use common sense in a situation like that, where it's like, yeah, the dude isn't hidden, but you don't get surprised by anything, like, ever. That's kind of the gist of the rule. So, yeah.
I really get caught up in, because, you know, I studied law. Yeah. Knowing what the words mean, because a lot of times words mean something very specific. Yeah.
And I think it's really down to just, this is a good example of talk to your DM about it. And if they say like, it's not just hidden, it's like, you know, anything that you don't see can't surprise you. It's not just hidden things. It could be something that you just didn't notice. That still won't surprise you. Or
I think
they might be
a lot
like...
of players have a tendency to take what is written as law, and they rely very heavily on the wording specifically. But as a translator... Like, as a translator, my job is to take things that people have written, rules that they've written for games, that kind of thing, and translate them from Japanese into English. And a lot of the time, the writer hasn't thought that deeply about their wording. They're not being as specific as the player is when interpreting it, because they know what they mean already. So that makes perfect sense to them. So when they wrote hidden, they probably 100% meant unseen by you. But in their head, it made sense that if someone is hidden from you, then they are unseen. Then you are,
Maybe they took a look at it. If you're not hidden, if you're not using that hide feat, then you're automatically seen. but it's not necessarily true.
It's not necessarily true, exactly. So there's the rule semantics of the wording, and then there's also the translation semantics of inferral, I guess, when you say certain words.
But I mean, sometimes the semantics is important though, because you keep talking about...
It can be, yeah.
Because you keep talking about surprised when you're talking about this. This third point has nothing to do with surprise. It's the second one that says you can't be surprised.
Yes.
So you can not be surprised, but someone who's hidden still gets advantage on an attack roll against you, even though you're not surprised.
Yes. But this one does,
So they're actually, the semantics can be important, and it can't.
They can. But in this particular case, it seems fairly obvious that
it does.
The change that
it's a good change.
Yeah, and that's
why
it
shows the original intention.
Yeah, it does. It shows.
So
exactly.
You have to try and read the intention rather than just reading the words. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And that's as a translator, that's kind of a skill that I've had to really hone.
And
so it kind of comes.
What's really funny is that everyone understood what you said before you said it because they could read the intention of what you were trying to say.
I was going to say the tough feat is actually a bit like that. You would think that the way it's written in the book, the tough feat would appear to affect a druid's hit points when they're in a beast form, but the intent is that they don't.
Yes.
So that's specifically written down somewhere. I read through them recently, and that was one of the ones that stood out to me, was that the intent was that they only get it while they're in their main form, not while they're in their shape.
Your hit point maximum increases by an amount equal to twice your level when you gain this feat. Whenever you gain a level thereafter, your hit point maximum increases by an additional 2 points. Yeah, that kind of... I could see how a druid might be like, when I beast shape, I get the beast shape form's hit points, and I get twice my level's hit points as well as that.
I think
as it's written, you could take it as that.
Yeah, but it makes sense that it's your character's hit points, not the thing that your character shape shifts into's hit points. Yeah.
But you also have to read what it says in. You'd have to read what it says in wild shape. As well.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I know it speaks specifically about can the animal do it? Well, can an animal that you wild shape into get the toughness feat?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a bit.
No. I mean, you'd have to read what it says in the but the wild shape is a replacement thing. Your stats are replaced by those.
Yes.
Again, that's the inner lawyer in me coming out.
So even there's another errata to the athlete feat as well. So the athlete one increases your dex or strength by 1. When you're prone, it only costs 5 feet to stand up. It says climbing doesn't halve your speed, but the errata actually says it should say climbing doesn't cost you extra movement.
That's just because if you look at climbing,
it says
cost you 1 extra foot per foot you move.
Yes, exactly.
Not that it doubles your.
Not that it doubles the amount. It doesn't. Because your speed doesn't technically change.
But technically also, I suppose you could climb up difficult terrain, which would be 2 increases of 1. So every 1 foot you move will cost 3 feet of your movement.
Yeah, exactly.
With the athlete's foot, it would still cost you 2.
Yes.
Or what happens if you've got a speed of 40?
Then you'd move 20.
Or 35. Or 35 like a wild elf.
Yeah. So that's why the act of climbing itself doesn't cost you any extra movement, but the difficult terrain does.
Yeah. Or like I said, like monks and high elves and stuff that got higher speeds.
Yeah.
Halving your speed if you have a 60 speed could be more of a disadvantage.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I'd just like to point out that one way or another, athlete's foot is not a feat that I want to take.
Wrong kind of feat. All right.
I always go back to that. Was it that damn stupid movie, Robin Hood Men in Tights?
Oh yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, we have great strength of feet.
That's a great Great movie.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to roll through a few more. So the actor one doesn't have any erratas in it, but it's basically increase your charisma by 1 to a max of 20. You gain You gain advantage on charisma, deception, and performance checks when trying to pass yourself off as a different person. So kind of a specific situation that you use those in. So you don't just gain advantage on all deception and performance checks. It's only when you're trying to act like somebody else, hence the actor feat. You mimic the speech of another person or the sounds made by the creatures. You must have heard a person speaking or heard the creature make the sound for at least 1 minute. A successful wisdom insight check contested by your charisma deception check allows the listener to determine that the effect is faked. So essentially you could use this to, impersonate someone, basically. And there's the charger feat. When you
the active feat, I was going to say,
yep,
is a good example of a feat that can work with a specific subclass. That would go really well if you're an assassin.
Yeah, because you can already forge documents and do a whole bunch of other things as well.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, it's a pretty crap feat.
It's not that great, yeah.
Compared to toughness,
it's
not a great feat.
It might be really good in depending on what your campaign is like, and depending on what your group is like. Because if you're a really super RP heavy kind of group, and you use a lot of skill checks revolving around role playing situation type challenges, it could be really, really good. It could be, but unfortunately, a lot of D&D comes down to combat.
Yeah.
So not super specific for that.
This feat would have been extremely useful for your character, John, in our recent campaign when he was trying to convince people that he was a soldier, that he was a friend of theirs, that he was, we were wearing cloaks that the enemy we'd taken off of the enemy's equipment rack. And we'd gone around and tried to pretend to be...
when we're in the Mines of Handover, and we're in that house.
Yeah, I think...
and you busted into the room.
Yeah. And I tried to convince them that I was one of them, and the boss wanted them or something. Yeah, it really would have.
So that's a very specific example of where this feat would have come in handy.
It's a feat that it's very, very, very useful in a really limited, and a lot of feats are like that.
They are.
It's like the athlete feat is really, very useful in certain small situations.
Yeah, I think like I said before, it kind of really comes down to your campaign and what it's kind of focused on compared to the rest of your group. Some things, like the person in chat who's watching right now over on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/MitchAkid, plug, is we have a bard that quite literally uses that feat every single session in our group, she said. And so... she said, I think you're right. It's world based, and I think that's a lot of them are. But most of the ones that center around combat don't tend to be so reliant on certain situations. It's just when you're in combat, which is a fair bit. So the charger feat. Let's move on to the next one. When you use your action to dash, you can use a bonus action to make a melee weapon attack or shove a creature. If you move at least 10 feet in a straight line immediately before taking the bonus action, you either gain a +5 bonus to the attack's damage roll if you choose to make a melee attack and hit, or push the target up to 10 feet from you if you choose to shove and succeed. So basically your shove goes an extra 5 feet if you move 10 feet in a straight line towards them, or you get a +5 bonus to the attack roll if you hit with the bonus action. Which is pretty cool, because if you use your action to dash, you still get an attack out of it. And it doesn't say that the melee weapon has to be one-handed either. So basically you can just
as a bonus action
move, dash, and still get an attack with this feat. And it does extra damage. Or you can shove them up to 10 feet, which is kind of huge.
Yeah. Directly into cloud kill or something similar.
Or off a cliff, or into a pit, or who knows?
Next to the barbarian.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Or away from a party member that's struggling.
Yep. Yeah, the charger feat's actually one that I have not paid that much attention to be completely honest, but rereading it, it's actually pretty good.
we had a monk in the party that kept trying to shove people.
Yeah.
It would have been good if he could have just like walked 10 feet back, dash forward.
That's true, yeah. Just use your movement to get 10 feet in a straight line, line yourself up, and then just dash in there.
Yeah.
Shove people all over the place.
Well, I mean, it helps to be of a level where you can actually take a feat, though. I don't think the monk would have had that option.
So, level 4...
Unless they're a human.
Possibly not. Unless you're a human, it's level 4.
Yeah. Or like, unless, depending on the campaign, like, I remember a few campaigns ago, I did, or it might have been a one-shot, I basically was just like, everyone gets... Well, I mean, for the Curse of Strahd campaign, I gave everybody a racial feat at level 1. But for another campaign I remembered I was like, everyone just pick a feat that you like at level 1, because I was like, it makes the game more interesting, and this is a one-shot, so it's only going to last like a couple sessions anyway, so... And it just made it a little bit more interesting, rather than everyone just having like one attack and that was it kind of thing, because we were only like level 2 or 3 or something, I don't remember.
And if you hadn't specified racial feat, they probably all would have taken lucky, because it's the most... It's bullshit. Universally useful.
Actually, I think I banned it. I think I was like...
I've never used the lucky feat.
I haven't either, but it's so potent in just about everybody's hands.
I would be fine with the lucky feat. Okay, let's jump ahead to the lucky feat, because it's a big talking point, right? Let's explain it to the chat and everyone playing at home. Basically, you have 3 luck points that you can use throughout before you take a long rest. Whenever you make an attack roll, ability check, saving throw, you can spend one of those luck points to roll an additional d20, and you can choose whether or not you use that before you know the outcome of the die roll. So before you know whether the attack hits or the skill passes or whatever, you can choose to use that extra roll instead. But you can also spend a luck point to force an attack roll made against you to be re-rolled, and then you can choose whether or not you want them to use that roll or not. So like,
for context, I think it's important to note that what that means is that you can roll the dice, see that it's 16.
Yep.
Or like a 12. And then you roll another dice, and that's a 16. But you don't yet know what the DC is. You have to choose before you know what the DC is.
Yeah, you got to choose before you know the outcome of whatever you're doing is. So whether or not you hit with a melee attack, whether you pass a saving throw, or whether or not you pass a skill check, you got to choose the dice roll before you know whether or not you've passed. But a lot of the time it's pretty easy to tell. If you roll like a 5 and a 2, and you use your lucky feat to roll, and you roll like a 15, you're probably going to use the 15, right? So, like,
the biggest... still might not pass.
No, that's true. It still might not pass, of course. But, like, just... my problem with it is forcing the DM to re-roll rolls is a fucking pain in the ass. Like, I would be happy if the lucky feat didn't have that part and just had the you get 3 re-rolls a day thing. Like, that's fine. You can use the lucky feat to re-roll 3 things that you do. 3 of your attacks, or your saving throws, or your ability checks. I'm fine with that. But forcing the DM to re-roll an attack is pain in the balls.
Yeah, I think one of the problems some DMs have with it is players that stack it. But they'll take the lucky feat
and be a halfling and be a divination wizard.
Divination wizard, yeah, a halfling divination wizard.
Yes, dude.
Lucky feat.
Yeah, dude.
I'm rolling 4d20.
I was going to say, I don't have a problem with bountiful luck. Like, I think that works better.
It's a little bit different, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy
That's the Xanathar's
to let
one,
other
right?
people use that as well. Yes.
Yeah.
So instead of a specific lucky feat, as a DM, I'd be much more willing to give them their racial equivalent of bountiful luck to do the same sort of thing.
So basically have like the lucky feat, but they can only use it when they roll a 1?
Yeah.
That's a good idea. I like that idea.
Because the other thing is, you get wrapped up in advantage and disadvantage then as well. Like, if you roll your advantage or disadvantage and then you decide to roll a lucky die.
Yeah.
If you have advantage, I would say you get to pick one out of the 2 highest.
Yeah,
and
basically that's what it is.
Disadvantage,
yeah.
You have to take the 2 lowest.
Yeah. We'll see the advantage. So the advantage disadvantage thing. The advantage disadvantage thing is actually a little bit more tricky than that.
It's
like
kind of grey.
For advantage, that's fine. Like the two highest, because you're trying to use the highest dice. But for disadvantage picking, the two lowest isn't actually how.
Well, you have to.
It would
You'd
work,
have to take
right?
the lowest of the three.
No, because what happens is you roll with disadvantage, and you have.
No, they get to pick, so they have to take the two lowest, and then they can pick the two.
Yeah. Before you start arguing about that, you got to remember, with advantage, it doesn't matter which one is the two highest. Basically, you're rolling 3 dice and taking the one which is highest.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Advantage and the lucky feat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can't say, "Oh, you've got to take the last one." It's not a replacement. It's an additional.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. So with advantage, right? You roll 2, and then if you don't like either of those 2, you then roll the lucky one, and you can use the lucky one. It doesn't matter about the event. And the same thing with disadvantage. So you roll 2 and you pick the lowest, but then you roll a lucky one, and you can just choose the lucky one and ignore the other one that you rolled.
But if you're a halfling and one of those dice
is a 1, you can roll another one.
You can re-roll it.
Yeah. It's like that's why it's really frustrating. And then if you're a divination wizard,
why you have to limit it.
And then if you're a divination wizard, you can be like, I'm going to use this 16 that I pre-rolled earlier today instead. And like,
one thing about all of these feats and about all of these abilities is that they kind of require that you are playing the rules to a T. They kind of require that, a lot of the times in our parties, we'll be doing roles for perception or investigation, and we'll say, "Oh, well, I'm helping them out."
Mm-hmm.
And, that's generally fairly accepted. It's the idea is, well, you weren't looking alone, et cetera, et cetera. But, for that to be for this kind of feat to be applicable, you would have to be playing it in a way that if you fail, you fail.
That's what I mean, though, right? That's why you have to declare whether or not you're using the lucky dice before you know whether or not you pass or fail. And so
right, but it wouldn't be that useful in a game where you're playing with sort of looser rules, where you're helping people out, etc., on ability checks.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be if that useful if you're constantly using it with ability checks. But often it's used with like attack rolls and maybe saving throws and stuff like that in like desperate situations, which I think is fine. Yeah. But yeah, for ability checks, it's kind of a bit silly. But yeah, like Twitch chat says again, like some of the fun of D&D comes from failing. That's exactly right.
But the thing to do that is, as a DM, you really have to take control of the situation and not let the players get away with stupid stuff.
Yes.
There's a reason you're only allowed to have one long rest a day.
Yep.
And that's because of things like this. The lucky feat, you can only use it 3 times before a long rest.
Yes.
So while it can be a really handy advantage, those 3 times you can use it, it's only 3 attacks.
It is. It is.
So it's not that big an advantage if you look at it like that.
Like,
but
I think
you've got to have a DM that makes you do the correct amount of fights in a day.
Yes. Yeah. It's not like and this is a bit off topic, but like the fight scenarios per day is usually it's like in one day from long rest to long rest, a party should be able to handle, based on their challenge rating, 1 deadly encounter. They should be able to defeat a deadly encounter if they use all their abilities and they get good rolls and they get kind of lucky, and not even kind of lucky, but pretty average. They should be able to defeat it. A hard encounter, they should be able to defeat that, and they should be able to defeat like a hard and an easy encounter in the same day. They should be able to defeat like 3 medium encounters, and they should be able to defeat like 5 easy encounters. And that's all based purely on combat, right? So if you were to throw 5 easy combat encounters at a party, they should be able to beat all of them, but they'll be tapped by the end of the 5th one, and they might be low on hit points, depending on their party makeup and all the abilities and things. But that would constitute them having almost a full day's worth of adventuring. Whereas, like, if they go up against a deadly encounter, the deadly encounter is going to last longer. It's going to require more focus and energy from all the characters and the players. And it's likely that they'll be tapped after that combat. And then it's like, well, if they get thrown from a deadly encounter into even an easy encounter, the easy encounter then could become deadly depending on how the combat goes. So, like, based on combats alone, yeah, I think you're right. Like everything is like a balance of how much you need to force your players to do throughout an adventuring day before they can long rest again.
And I think a lot of things you can actually force your players to do it, and it's not always illogical game ways. Like sometimes it's actually more logical game wise, because like how many times have we gone into a building, taken out 3 rooms and decided to rest for an hour, which is what a short rest.
Yeah.
There's somebody in the next room. They hear us.
Yeah, they know we're coming.
They're prepared. If they're not preparing, they might actually just outright, oh look, and now they're all not looking, just throw in a gas bomb.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, all of a sudden you haven't got your short rest because nobody looked in the next room to make sure there's no orcs there.
Yeah, and that's where things like patrols come in handy too. If your players are like trying to long rest when they just had a long rest, when they're on lookout, make something attack them. They don't get their long rest. Yeah. They didn't rest. Yeah. Just fuck them. Yeah. I mean, that sounds bad, but like, you know what I mean? Yeah. You can't always just let them get away with it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said, technically you can only have one long rest a day.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an 8-hour rest. Yeah, it's
the short rests that get the DM, especially when you've got things like warlocks and paladins.
Yeah, and warrior fighters, I should say.
Fighters, who a lot of their abilities come back after a short rest.
Yeah.
But once they hit 6th level, they get
their inspirations back. Yeah. They still don't get spell slots and stuff back, so that's a bit different.
Yeah, I know.
But inspirations can be very, very handy for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got to keep them ticking over. You've got to have, okay, if I want them to do 2 or 3 easy
encounters,
and they do, and after every single one they're going, and now we're stopping for an hour, and now we're stopping for an hour. Well, there's 2 ways to handle it. Either you attack them, or you put in and go, if you don't finish this today, the world ends.
Yeah, you can give them ultimatums, that's for sure. Yeah.
And all of this, wrapping it back up to where the feats come from, is the balancing act for Lucky, which I think a lot of people miss.
Yeah, it's difficult. A lot of
people miss simple, but because I played a game where I was playing a gunslinger in Pathfinder, and one of the players really didn't want me to play them because he said they were broken, and if you have this magic item and that magic item and that, you can shoot your gun 6 times in an attack.
Yeah.
At first level. And I'm like, at first level, where the hell do you get a magic item?
Yeah.
And
just don't give me those.
Gold each.
Yeah, just don't give me those magic items. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Like as a gunslinger, I started with one gun that was broken.
Yeah.
My character spent most of his time fixing his own gun to keep it working. And he was talking about players that were doing this with 6 guns at first level. I'm like, yeah, make sure you get those balancing acts right, or the game does get
exactly. Don't give out items willy-nilly. Items is coming later, though, guys, in the podcast. Don't worry. We'll get to items.
But I mean, that's what it works with the Lucky feed as well.
Yeah. You just got to
make the balancing stuff come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this is kind of a topic that underpins tonight's entire theme, which is, balancing characters and all of that stuff. And players will try to get away with anything they can. If they can get a feat that gives them an extra roll, if they can get an item that then gives them another advantage on top of that, they're going to do everything they can. So that's kind of where it comes down to the DM's job to say no. And sometimes it can be really hard because I as a player, I always try to spin it in my favor. I'm like, I won't do it this way, and I wouldn't use it for that. But
the thing is, you want your players to have fun, so you want to give them fun things to do and to use. But the problem is, if you do it too often, it can break what you're trying to do, and it might not be fun for the rest of the players in the party to have to deal with those things all the time as well. So,
I mean, if you go back to the I've got this idea on my mind. I'm going back to the actor fate, which we said really useful in limited conditions.
Yep.
As a DM, it is fun to every once in a while to let the assassin with the actor fate do that.
Yeah,
and have
for
his
sure.
fun and have his moment in the show. And then you can go, he does it. And as a DM, you think, okay, he's doing it a bit too often. The next time he goes and does it with this race that he's never seen, and all of a sudden he finds that he's a human they see absolutely every human as looking the same. They can't tell the difference between us.
Yeah. Yeah, you're trying to
no longer helping.
You're trying to act like this other human, and all the Dragonborn, just everyone, all humans look alike. Really stereotypical.
You're talking.
You all look the same to me. Yeah.
Because you're talking to like an elemental that sees all the humans as just little squishy things.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go through some of the other interesting ones real quick. So there's crossbow expert, which is really cool for basically being able to ignore the loading quality of crossbows. So if you have the extra attack, you can fire twice with it. It also gives you means you don't get disadvantage, and you can bonus action shoot a hand crossbow, which is really cool. Then there's defensive duelist, which is really good. So when you're wielding a finesse weapon, you can add your proficiency bonus to your AC when you're only wielding one-handed, right? Hits you with an... Oh, no, when you're wielding a finesse weapon with your proficient and another creature hits you with a melee attack, you can use reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your AC. So you don't actually have to be wielding it one-handed. You can just... It's got to be a finesse weapon. So if you've got like a rapier or a scimitar or a short sword... you can
all the ritual one-handed anyway.
They are. But you can have a shield. That's what I mean. Yeah, you can still have a shield.
Something to note about this feat is I actually got caught up in this because yesterday we played that campaign, and I misunderstood that dual wielding meant extra attack. So I mean, never, like, nowhere in this feat does it say that you actually get an extra attack, and I didn't have an extra attack.
No, what dual wielding is the dual wielding fighting style that you get from the Blood Hunter means that you can add your dexterity bonus to the damage roll of the second attack that you get, that is your bonus action, because dual wielding itself is like use an attack as an action, and then if it's a light weapon, you can attack with your bonus action as well, with your offhand weapon.
So now I understand that, and it's perfectly fine. But I just think it's really important for people to be able to find that fine line where, it comes down to semantics. You see dual wielder and you automatically think, oh, I get 2 attacks. Awesome. You really have to read the feats carefully, and that was my, it was my bad. I did not pay attention to that.
But the problem with that is, Leela, everybody gets 2 attacks if they're dual wielding.
Yeah.
With those attacks, I think the big advantage I find it with the dual wielding is that is it one that's
bonus 1 to your AC.
It doesn't have to be a light weapon.
It doesn't have to be a light weapon. Yeah, so you can use like long swords.
You could use
or battle axes.
It's still going to be. I think it's still.
It still has to be one-handed.
You can use long swords.
2 long swords, 2 rapiers.
I think I had 2 scimitars.
Yeah, you did.
Honestly, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. I still think it's a great feat. I'm just like, I guess my point is just be really careful when you're reading the feats to really understand what they mean.
Yeah,
because sometimes it doesn't tell you everything. It doesn't spell everything out if they think it's obvious.
No, because the dual wielder feat and the dual wielding concept are 2 different things.
And then there's
the
dual wielding fighting style as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So the dual wielding fighting style is the fighting style that gives you your dexterity bonus or your strength bonus or whatever your attack bonus is to your offhand weapon when you used a bonus attack. The dual wielding in combat means you can attack with if you attack with a light weapon as your attack action, you can attack with a light weapon as a bonus action with your offhand weapon. And the dual wielder feat means dual wielder feat, which is an actual feat that you have to take at either 4th level or whenever you get a feat. Access to a feat is it gives you +1 to your AC, and when you're using 2-weapon fighting, you don't have to have light weapons to attack with attack with your bonus action. You can use long swords or anything that's one-handed, because you can only hold you can't hold a 2-handed weapon in one hand. So
But also you can draw 2 weapons at the same time.
Yes, rather than only having to draw 1, then another one.
Yeah, you can draw 2
one-handed weapons when you would only one.
Normally have, which actually could be quite useful if you're a knife thrower.
Yes, you could.
Because every time you could draw the 2 of them and then throw them.
daggers everywhere on you.
Dagger. Yes, very much. All right, so there is Dungeon Delver, which gives you...
I really like this feat.
Better perception and investigation checks to find secret doors, which is pretty good. Advantages on saving throws to avoid traps. Resistance to the damage dealt by traps. And you can search for traps while traveling at normal pace rather than slow pace. Pretty cool. Pretty cool if you're doing a lot of dungeon crawls. Pretty cool.
If I'm doing a one-shot and I'm playing a rogue, especially if it's... Even if it is a low-level one, I might take a human...
Just to get that right at the start.
Purely for the fact that I might be able to get Dungeon Delver. It just adds to the feeling of doing a one-shot, I feel. It
does. It's really good. It would have been amazing for when, like, ages ago when we did the Shrine of Tamochang, when we did the one out of the Yawning Portal, because there was traps, like, everywhere. And there was secret doors, like, everywhere in that place. You guys missed, like, 3/4 of them.
None of us thought of that at the time.
Then you got the durable feat. So more con. When you roll a hit die, you basically gain max from it. Elemental, adept. You have to be able to cast a spell. But you choose a damage type from the, elemental damage types. And spells you cast ignore resistance of the chosen damage type. So if you are like huge on using fire and only fire spells, then if you take the elemental adept and you choose fire, things that are resistant to fire means that you still do max damage to them, basically.
Well, look, you may want to think about this one for when you go to hell, because a lot of damage types get resisted down there.
And in addition to that, when you roll damage for the spell you cast that deals the damage of the type, you can treat any one as a 2 on the damage rolls, which is pretty handy. And you can take this feat multiple times, but you have to choose a different damage type each time. Then you got the Grappler feat, which is a point of congestion in my current campaign on Saturdays in Curse of Strahd. Basically, you get advantage on attack rolls when you're grappling a creature. The creature you're grappling, sorry. I should specify that. You can use your action to try and pin the creature grappled, and to do so, you make another grapple check. If you succeed, you and the creature are both restrained until the grapple ends, which just means you can't move and you are, what's restrained? You can't take reactions, I think? Something like that.
0 movement.
I'll remember.
You can't move.
Creatures that are one size larger than you don't automatically succeed on checks to escape your grapple. Ignore the third benefit. It refers to a non-existent rule. Okay, so I guess that doesn't exist anymore.
It's actually, interestingly enough, not on 5e.
Yeah,
there is no third.
It's not on there anymore. Yeah, it's errated from the PHP.
Yeah, even D&B Beyond hasn't got it there anymore.
They probably got like errated out of the book. Then you got Great Weapon Master, which I think is freaking awesome, but it's also kind of sucky unless you get advantage a lot. Once on your turn, when you score a crit with a melee weapon that reduces a creature to 0 hit points, you can make another weapon attack as a bonus action, which is pretty cool. Before you make a melee attack with a heavy weapon you are proficient with, you can choose to take a -5 penalty on the attack roll, and if it hits, you gain +10 to the damage of the attack, which is freaking massive. It's so good. But taking a -5 penalty is really bad unless you do get advantage a lot. And I was thinking about taking Great Weapon Master for Zarek, because he's a barbarian and he can give himself reckless, so he can get advantage all the time. And basically basically try and
if you had taken Great Weapon Master, you would have died before you showed up.
Maybe.
Several times. There was some bad rolling going on while you were away.
I know. It's okay. It's alright.
The computer did it. I didn't do it.
It wasn't his fault.
I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, that probably would have been a bad idea.
Yeah.
But that's luck for you.
Then we got the Healer feat. The Healer feat's really good. John loves this feat. You can use the Healer's Kit to stabilize a dying creature, and also they regain 1 hit point, which means they are conscious again, which doesn't really mean you stabilize them. You just return 1 hit point. But anyway, as an action, you can spend one of the Healer's Kit's charges to restore 1d6 +4 hit points to it. plus an additional hit points equal to the creature's maximum number of hit dice. The creature can't regain hit points from this feat again until it finishes a short or long rest. It's really good. It's really, really good as long as you have access to healer's kits. Then you've got Heavily Armored, which is another favorite of John's one. No, not Heavily Armored. Heavy Armor Master, that's the one. Heavily Armored just means you got to have proficiency with medium armor, you gain an extra strength, and you gain heavy armor proficiency. So basically you can use heavy armor. Then Heavy Armor Master is the other one that John really likes, which is increases your strength score by 1. And when you're wearing heavy armor, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage that you take from non-magic weapons is reduced by 3. That's just a flat 3. It's really annoying. Clerics, paladins already have huge armor class. You finally hit them. It does 3 less damage. At low levels, it's like...
time it's critical.
Yeah.
You have to think about that.
At low levels, like goblins and shit hitting, they only hit for like 7 or 8 like max damage on their short sword or scimitars attacks. It's doing like... Sometimes it does 0 damage, because like you just negate all of it with your heavy armor. It's pretty crazy. Then you got Inspiring Leader, which is another good feat. You spend 10 minutes to inspire your companions, shoring up their resolve to fight. When you do so, choose up to 6 friendly creatures, that can include yourself, within 30 feet of you, who can see or hear you or who understand you. Each creature gains temporary hit points equal to your level plus your charisma modifier. And a creature can't gain temporary hit points from this feat until it has finished a short or long rest. So basically every short rest, you can spend 10 minutes to boost everyone's morale, and they all get at like your level plus charisma mod in temp hit points, and they just last. One thing I think they don't run out.
Interesting about like the 5e feats compared to older feats. I don't know if it was just that I was a really selfish player when I played 3.5.
Maybe.
But I feel like the 5e feats tend to have a lot more collaboration to them. There's a lot more in them that affects the other players, as opposed to just strengthening you or giving you advantages.
I think that's because, well, there are a fair few that just give you advantages as well, but I think
I mean, comparatively, I feel like there's a lot more of them.
Yeah, I think like they added a lot of these feats so that you can take them and not be a healer, but still take them and be able to help people, or you can take them and not be, you know, great in combat, but still be able to do something. Like the Dungeon Delver one is a good example, right? Like you could be... You might not be a rogue. You might just be like, you might be, you know, a bard, or you might be like, whatever. It doesn't matter. It could be any class. It doesn't make a difference, right? You could be a sorcerer, and you can take the Dungeon Delver feat. It just means you've got another thing that you can do that isn't tied to your class, but is still extremely helpful for everybody.
It just feels like, you know, a lot of the feats are kind of aimed at increasing cooperation between the party.
Yeah, like I love the next feat I'm going to talk about, Keen Mind. I love this feat. I think it's amazing. It can be super frustrating for the DM, but as somebody who watches Critical Role constantly, sees one of the characters on there who has the Keen Mind feat is quite often just being
do it
like...
a lot anymore.
He's still like, I know exactly what it is, or he'll be like, oh yeah, I know that because we learnt that, but I don't remember it, but my character knows that. So, but basically, increases your int by 1 to a max of 20. You always know which way is north. You always know the number of hours left before the next sunrise or sunset, and you can accurately recall anything you have seen or heard within the past month.
Bet it gets held up because you've got to remember everything that they've heard for the last month.
Yeah, exactly.
In-game time
last month, which is like, sometimes our session might not even be a whole day. Like, and then...
So I think what's particularly interesting about the third one, you always know the number of hours left before the next sunrise or sunset.
So when you're like in the Underdark or somewhere where you can't...
teleports a lot.
Yeah. But that wouldn't matter.
If you spend a lot of time going to different places around a large area,
really depends on the setting.
You could potentially be going back and forward in time. You could potentially be going back and forward across,
really depends on the
ley lines.
But I know what you mean. But it really depends on the setting.
Time zones.
Yeah, it really depends on the setting. So,
like the reason why it comes up is because I one of my favorite books. There's a travel system called Ladders. And they use ladders. They're basically teleportation devices, but they can only go from one specific place to another specific place.
Yeah, like
and then you have to travel to the next ladder to get to the one that takes you to the other specific place. But they're traveling all the way across a planet, back and forth, all the time. One of the guys knows where all of the ladders is. one of the other guys has an uncanny sense of time. He always knows exactly what time it is and exactly what day it is. Yeah. And those two abilities combined make that kind of travel possible. Without that, you would be in chaos the whole time.
Yes.
I'm done.
Yeah, this is like, it's very specific. Like, if you, you would know, like, as an example, if you traveled across, like, intercontinental and, like, you went to a different time zone, you might not know, depending on where you were, if you were stuck, like, underground, or you hadn't seen the sun, or any of the information that you would usually be able to discern what time it is in the day. If you didn't know any of that information when you got there, and someone asked you what time is it, or how long until the sun sets, you would be like, well, I don't know what time the sun sets here, but I know what time the sun sets where I just was. Because you were just there, and you knew that information when you were there, and you don't forget anything for a month. So, based on that, you could be like, well, I don't know, but do you know what the difference is between here and that other place I just was? And they'd be like, oh, it's about 3 hours difference. They'd be like, okay, well, the sun's going to set in this time. And you just know it then. And then because someone told you and you figured it out, you just know it for the next 30 days. You would know what time the sun sets and what time it rises in that time zone, as well as the other time zone, because you didn't just forget about it, because you can't forget anything for 30 days. so like, it's really, it's just like, you become, I don't want to say like the Rain Man, but sort of like that.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't forget anything. Okay, then we got lightly armored. You gain proficiency with light armor, and you get +1 to dex or strength. Pretty straightforward. Pretty good for wizards. Linguistics, you get int increased by 1, and you learn 3 languages. And you can ably create written ciphers, so you can make your own codes and stuff, which is pretty cool. And there's a DC, there's a way to sort out the DC of what they would be if someone tries to magically figure it out or whatever. Lucky feat, we got through that, sort of. Mage Slayer, when a creature within 5 feet of you casts a spell, you can use reaction to bonk them on it. And when you damage a creature that is concentrating on a spell, they have disadvantage on the saving throw. Pretty good. Then,
another great one for rogues.
Yeah, then you have advantage on saving throws against spells cast within 5 feet of you. So if someone's trying to, like, shoo you away with a thunder wave or thunderclap or whatever, you've got advantage on the saving throw, which is pretty awesome. Magic Initiate, so you can choose a class: Bard, Cleric, Druid, Sorcerer, Warlock, or Wizard. You learn 2 cantrips of your choice from that class spell list, as well as a first level spell from the same list, and the spell you learn, oh my god. You can cast that at its lowest level, and once you cast it again, you got to finish a long rest before you can cast it again. This feat's limit on casting a first level spell applies only to the casting given by the feat. Yes, yeah. So if you know the spell and you're actually already a spellcaster, and you can use your other spell slots to cast the spell, but you just can't use that spell slot to cast anything else. And yeah, the spellcasting ability depends on the class you chose the spell list from. Then Martial Adept, so basically you learn 2 maneuvers from the Battle Master archetype in the fighter class, which is pretty cool. It gives
don't mind this on a paladin.
Gives you a DC. It's pretty good. It's pretty good for that. You get superiority die, which are like, I think they're always D6s. They don't level up like a fighter ones do, but they're pretty cool, and you use those to add to the damage, basically. Medium Armor Master, same as the light one and the heavy one. You gain proficiency. You don't have disadvantage on your stealth checks, and you can add 3 instead of just 2 to dexterity for your AC for some armor types. Then mobile, when you're exceptionally speedy, you increase your speed by 10. You can dash through difficult terrain without being impeded by it. When you make a melee attack against a creature, you don't provoke attacks of opportunity from that creature for the rest of your turn, whether you hit or not. So basically, you can try and attack a creature and then run away, and then you don't get hit by them, which is pretty good. You can do that with Drunken Master, and you can do that with like rogues if you just disengage as your bonus action and get out of there as well. Moderately armored, so again, another armor feat. You gain proficiency, dex or strength goes up by 1. Mounted Combatant, you have advantage on melee attack rolls against any unmounted creature that is smaller than your mount, and you can force an attack targeted at your mount to target you instead. So that if they try and knock you off, you can force it to attack you instead. If the mount is subject to an effect that allows it to make a dexterity saving throw, it only takes half damage instead.
Sorry.
Yeah, it takes no damage, instead of only taking half damage if it succeeds.
I kind of stopped paying attention back at Mage Slayer because I started thinking about this a lot just now.
Okay.
For one thing, it seems kind of extremely advantageous. It doesn't seem to me like there's any limitation to how many times you can use those abilities.
Yeah, there is, because you only get one reaction around. So you can only use your reaction once.
Around, but it doesn't say that you can't use it every round, for example.
No, yeah, you can. Yeah, you totally can.
Yeah. So, I mean, that seems amazing. But also,
if you just stand next to the casters,
wouldn't it be great if you were a caster yourself with Mage Slayer?
Yeah.
And you had, like, a dagger or something, you would have that extra ability to take an attack every turn.
Blade warlocks.
Yeah.
Hunter packs too.
Sorry, my brain just kind of stopped and like started turning that feat over around in my head for a little while.
How can I use this to my advantage? Yeah, honestly, I think it's really Mage Slayer is like really good for melee classes that often get like, hindered some way so that they can't get to the caster. Because once they get there, they might get knocked away, or once they get there, the thing that they're really trying to do is stop them concentrating on a certain spell or something. It's super duper handy for that. So if they get to the caster and the caster then casts slow on them, and then they can't take a reaction, you can only use one attack or move or reaction. I don't even think they can take reactions. I think it's attack or move, and I think that's all they can use, like each round. Then the mage can just walk away from them, or the caster can just walk away from them. They can't do anything about it. This means not only can they still attack when they cast the spell, then after they cast the spell, their attack then would cause them to have disadvantage on the saving throw if they actually took any damage from it. And so, like,
I also feel though that like casters are sometimes at a disadvantage against other casters.
It can be, yeah, it can be.
And that's kind of where this would come in handy as a caster to have this.
Yeah.
So that you're not just.
Problem is, you've got to be within 5 feet of them.
In a melee battle against a melee fighter, but it would be something that you could use against a caster who has some kind of immunity against. Your spell,
the only part of this that's really handy for caster versus caster is the causing them to have disadvantage on the concentration check, because the other ones you have to be within 5 feet of them, so you basically have to run up to them as a caster, which is not something you necessarily want to do anyway. There are also
situations where you end up within 5 feet of someone and it's not to your advantage, but you can't get away.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's where this works pretty well for like against other like mage versus mage battle. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Observant feat is that's cool. Observant feat increase int or wisdom by 1. You can see a creature's mouth while it's speaking a language you can understand. You can interpret what it's saying. So basically, you can read lips, and you get a +5 bonus to your passive wisdom, perception, and passive intelligence investigation scores, which don't get used often enough, to be honest. Like passive perception and passive investigation don't get used that often, but generally, like, if you've got a DC for a perception check or an investigation check that's like lower than like basically the whole party's perception or investigation passively, they don't have to roll for it, right? They just know it's there. They just see it. Like, that's why it's a passive perception, a passive investigation. Whereas if it's a little bit higher than the average of the party, then you probably want to ask for checks, especially if they're looking for specific things with investigation checks. It just would make it a little bit safer, I suppose, than just giving them all the information all the time straight away, because they might not necessarily have tried hard enough to get it. Then you've got a polearm master. When you make an attack action with a glaive, halberd, or quarterstaff, you can use your bonus action to make a melee attack with the blunt end of the weapon. The weapon's die is just a d4, but it does bludgeoning damage. When you're wielding a glaive, halberd, pike, quarterstaff, other creatures provokes attack of opportunity when they enter your reach. And because like glaives and halberds and pikes have a 10-foot reach, when they move to you, you get an attack of opportunity. And when they move away from you, you can also get attack of opportunity. Not in the same round, though, because you can only use reaction once. But, you know, it's cool to know. Then there's a resilient feat. So you gain proficiency in saving throws in whatever ability score you choose to increase with the feat. So you get +1 in ability. Bam. Yes, mix the Polearm Master with the Sentinel feat. Really, really good. Basically, they enter 10 feet. You hit them before they get to you. If you hit them, their speed's reduced to 0, and they have to stay like 5 feet away from you, basically.
Is this a good time to mention? I don't think Valia ever got that racial feat you were talking about.
Which one?
You said that everyone got a racial feat at first level. I don't think, because I joined late, I don't think I got that.
She was a what's race is she? She's a
She's a barbarian.
Race.
I think she's human. Just barbarian.
Human? You already get a feat at level 1, don't you?
Did I?
Well, maybe. Oh, maybe you didn't. Maybe you just chose the +1 to everything human. But that's a good point.
I don't remember.
We can add that on Saturday.
I don't think I knew about that.
We can add that on Saturday. We can add that on Saturday for sure. All right. Then we got Ritual Caster. Okay, Ritual Caster is the long wall of text, but basically you choose 2 spells and you can Ritual Cast them. No, they got to have the Ritual Cast tag on them, but basically, yeah. The spell must be listed, blah blah blah. Must have a ritual tag. The process of copying the spell into a ritual book takes 2 hours per level of the spell. Costs 50 gold. The spell represents material components expanded. Blah blah. Yeah. Okay.
Good if you're running a non.
So you have a ritual book that you can cast ritual spells out of that you don't have to like prepare. Cool. All right, Savage Attack.
It can be useful.
It can be really useful, but yeah. If you can find the spells, it's great. But you got to actually find them, and that's the hard part. Spell scrolls come up every now and then, but not all of them are necessarily ritual spells. So,
I mean, there's been a lot of cases where we've had spells come up in treasure and nobody has been able to cast them.
Yes, but the other thing is a lot of those spells that come up aren't ritual spells either. Like, they've got to be ritual spells for you to copy them down into a ritual spell book. Like, you can't just have Fireball in the book. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Why not?
Because ritual casting a fireball would take you like 11 minutes.
I don't want to hear your logic about that.
It'd take you like 11 minutes to cast a fireball. They're going to kill you before you cast it. Like 11 minutes in combat is literally like it's like 110 rounds of combat. If you get interrupted once, you have to start again. Like that's it's just it doesn't work. All right, Savage Attacker. Once per turn, when you roll damage for a melee weapon attack, you can re-roll the weapon's damage die and use either total. Sentinel. Yeah, this is a good one too. When you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, the creature's speed becomes 0 for the rest of the turn. Creatures within 5 feet of you provoke opportunity attacks even if they take the disengage action. So even if they disengage, they still provoke attacks of opportunity. When a creature within 5 feet of you makes an attack against someone that isn't you, you can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against that creature. So basically, like, if they attack someone next to you, you can punch them or bop them or stab them. And that also means their speed's 0. Because it was an opportunity attack. Oh no, it's not an opportunity attack. It's just a reaction to make a weapon attack. That isn't an opportunity attack. No, I'm sorry. That's not how it works. So you can use a reaction to make a weapon attack if they're attacking someone that isn't you, but that doesn't reduce their speed. The only time it reduces their speed is if it's an opportunity attack, which is from them trying to get away. or if you have the polearm, if they're trying to get to you. So they're a little bit, yeah. Then there's the sharpshooter one. So attacking at long range doesn't impose disadvantage on your weapon attack rolls, and you ignore 3/4 cover and half cover. And before you make an attack with a weapon attack, this is the same as the Great Weapon Master. So you can take a -5 to hit and gain +10 to the damage, which is pretty cool. Shield Master. If you take an attack action on your turn, you can use a bonus action to shove a creature with 5 feet with your shield. If you aren't incapacitated, you add your shield's AC to your dex saving throws as well. And if you're subject to an effect that allows you to make a dex saving throw that lets you take half damage, you can actually take 0 damage because you kind of shield yourself with your shield. Skilled, gain 3 skills or a tool. Skulker, you gain the ability to hide in lightly obscured areas. When you hide from a creature, or when you're hidden from a creature and miss it with a ranged attack, it doesn't reveal your position, and dim light does not impose disadvantage on your wisdom perception checks. There's a sniper one. You have to have the ability to cast at least one spell sniper rather. You have to have the ability to cast at least one spell. When you cast a spell, it requires you make an attack roll. Spell's range is doubled, which is pretty crazy. Your range spell attacks ignore half cover and 3/4 cover, so the same as the sharpshooter one. And you learn one cantrip that requires an attack roll from the Bard, Cleric, Druid, Sorcery, Warlock, Wizard spell list, and your spellcasting ability depends on what list you took it from. There is the Tavern Brawler feat, which means you gain Strength or Con by 1. You're proficient with improvised weapons and unarmed strikes, which is pretty cool. Your unarmed strikes hit for D4 damage instead of just 1 plus your strength mod. And when you hit a creature with an unarmed strike or an improvised weapon on your turn, you can use your bonus action to attempt to grapple them, which is actually pretty freaking cool. You can grapple with a bonus action if you take the Tavern Brawler feat, if you hit them with an unarmed strike. That's pretty good. Tough gives you more hit points, and it's like retroactive, so whenever you take it, you gain extra hit points basically from whatever levels you were before. Warcaster, so you have to have the ability to at least cast one spell. You have advantage on concentration checks when you take damage. You can perform the somatic components of a spell even if you have weapons or a shield in both hands, which is pretty awesome. When a hostile creature's movement provokes an attack of opportunity, you can use a reaction to cast a spell rather than making an opportunity attack. Spell must have a casting time of 1 action and can only target that one creature. So basically, instead of opportunity attack stab, you can opportunity attack like Ray of Sickness or something. Yeah, something that targets that one creature. You can't like Fireball, because Fireball doesn't target a creature, it targets an area. So it's got to target a creature and have a casting spell. And then there's Weapon Master, which gives you strength or dex by 1, and you gain proficiency with 4 simple or martial weapons of your choice. And that's all the ones that are in the PHB. And then over to Xanathars, there are all the racial feats, which basically it tells you which races can take which ones. Some of them cross over a little bit and double over a little bit. The human one is Prodigy, which is probably going to be that one that Valia will get. You gain 1 skill proficiency of your choice, 1 tool proficiency of your choice, and are fluent in 1 language of your choice. Choose 1 skill in which you already have proficiency, and you gain expertise, which is like double proficiency basically. And skill you chose must be one that isn't already benefiting from expertise. So you can't like double the double basically. So yeah, you gain an extra skill, an extra tool, an extra language, and one of your skills you can double the proficiency in it, which might be really good if you were, say, I don't know, trying to intimidate people often or something. I mean, that's up to you.
No hint there at all of any kind.
Nudge, wink, wink. But there's tons. There's some really good ones in the racial feats for in Xanathar's guide too. So there's a bountiful luck one, which we kind of already talked about when we're talking about lucky, which is when an ally you can see within 30 feet of you rolls a 1 on a d20 attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can use your reaction to let them re-roll the dice, which is pretty cool.
Sorry, guys.
You're right.
All good.
Yeah, it was interesting that you mentioned that particular feat, Evan, because I probably would have ended up taking Infernal Constitution had you not said that.
Tiefling?
What feat are we up to?
We were talking about elemental adapt earlier, about ignoring resistance to certain damage types.
That's a really good feat.
Yeah.
And how it could be useful in a place like hell, where everything tends to be on fire.
Yeah.
So if you've got fire spells, it might be handy if you had elemental adapt fire.
Yeah, so I mean, they're kind of the opposite fates, because Infernal Constitution gives you resistance to cold and poison.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of a choice between inflicting damage and defending yourself.
Basically,
and personally, I'm 90% of the time going to go with inflicting damage. So now that I know that, I know which one to take and which one not to.
Thank God for podcasts.
Yay!
I remember reading, I think it was 3.5, where you could really make a specialty mage for like a fire mage or a lightning mage. And someone was writing suggestions, and one of the suggestions was always make sure you have an opposite spell memorized just in case. Like if you're a fire mage, Cone of Cold.
Yeah, you need something just in case.
Turn up with all these fire defense and go, haha, now you're going to hurt me. You go, that's right, Cone of Cold. Got that.
Yep.
So you have to be honest, I kind of hate that in Final Fantasy when you're fighting an enemy that is heavily preferential to a specific element, and you cast the opposite element at that, and then they absorb it, and then
it heals
you're just
them.
Like, well,
Trucker.
Well, see, that's just where like doing things like nature checks and arcana checks and those kind of checks can come in handy, because you might be like, hey, I've heard about this creature before, I'm pretty sure it's fire resistant.
Yeah.
And Andrew does a really good job of doing that with Zinda, when he does check some things out.
All of that's homebrew in 5th edition, isn't it?
It's sort of like, I don't remember whether there was a section on it in the skills section of the PHB where it has like you can use nature to determine a creature's, to determine what you know about a creature, like whether or not you've heard of it or stuff like that. I think there is some mention of it, but I think it does loosely say like your DM up to like DM's discretion on what you decide to describe about the creature, depending on the role that the player made. So, yeah.
Like that time we all hit the books in town and found out that young dragons like to use poison.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. It's a great concept.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
If it's not in a game, it should be homebrewed because, I mean...
Yeah.
Especially the whole research thing for sages and wizards and stuff.
Okay.
But that really went off on a tangent.
That's fine. Like
when do we not go off on tangents?
We're constantly on tangents.
I'm back for 5 seconds and off on a tangent.
Yes.
So basically, the all the racial feats are there's like 2 per race, per like standard race anyway. So dragonborn, dwarf, elf, gnome, half elf, half orc, halfling, human, and tiefling. They're the ones that the feats are centered around. Humans only get 1, yeah.
And squat nimbleness applies to dwarfs and any creature that's small.
Yeah.
Any humanoid that's small, sorry.
Yeah, because halflings get 3 because they get squat nimbleness.
Yeah. So basically, there's a few
gnomes,
that are
dwarves.
Yeah.
And what I did as well for our Strahd game was the Orcish Fury. One of our players is not an orc; they're a Goliath. So I just gave them the Orcish Fury because orcs have relentless endurance, but Goliaths have stone's endurance. So they're basically the exact same thing. So I just gave them Orcish Fury as like a feat to have rather than having nothing.
Aww, squat nimbleness increases your walking speed by 5.
Yeah,
That's
so
adorable.
they've got like a 35.
You know what? I've actually used that feat, and I think I used it just for that, so I could keep up with the rest of the party.
I'm just imagining like dwarves and halflings just like waddling around at like double the pace, and it's just a really cute image.
I mean, they don't really waddle; they just walk. They've just got shorter legs. They're not like penguins.
No, but they're moving fast, so they're like. I just imagine that like if they're moving faster, they're waddling.
Like Speedy Gonzalez feet.
They still have knees. They still have knees. They don't have to waddle.
No knees.
I don't know why, but I just imagine this. Like, I don't know, they lock their knees so they can move faster or something.
Why would that wouldn't make you move faster? It would make you move slower. All right, Dragon Sphere is really cool. When you use your breath weapon, you can roar, and then you can make people have to be scared of you if they don't pass the saving throw. Whenever you use your breath weapon as a Dragonborn, you got Dragon's Hide, so you basically gain like a version of natural armor, and you can use your claws to do melee attacks, which do a little bit more damage. Drow High Magic. Ooh, you got to be a Drow. Ooh. You get Levitate and Dispel Magic, which is pretty cool. Cast them once a day. And something else. It says 3. Oh, Detect Magic as well. So Detect Magic, Levitate, and Dispel Magic.
All useful.
Yep, they are. Super. But you don't really get to play Drow that often, unfortunately. Dwarven Fortitude. Increase con, and when you take the dodge action, you can heal yourself, which is pretty cool. Elven Accuracy. When you increase Dex, Int, Wisdom, or Charisma by 1. Whenever you have an advantage on an attack roll with Dex, Int, Wisdom, or Charisma, you can re-roll one of the dice, which is basically like the lucky feat, sort of. But you can use it all the time whenever you have advantage, which in the Strahd campaign isn't happening that often because I didn't choose to use the flanking rule. But depending on whether or not you do, or whether or not you have things like Fairy Fire, or constantly using the help action, or other things that are giving advantage, this could be super useful. Fade Away for gnomes. Increase your Dex or Int by 1, and whenever you take damage, you can use your reaction to become invisible till the end of your next turn, which is pretty cool. Fey Teleportation, so you can be a high elf. You get Int or Charisma by 1. You can learn to read, speak, and write Sylvan. And you learn Misty Step, which is pretty cool. Misty Step's a pretty cool spell. And you can use it whenever you finish a short or long rest. Ooh, that's pretty cool.
But this is one of the things where you got to read the world, the words. Sorry, Layla. You learn a Misty Step spell.
Mm-hmm. It can cast it once without expending spell slots. Oh yeah, it's
cast the spell slots.
Yeah, but yeah, but only once
all
without.
The feats say that.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
No, that's true. They don't. That is true.
I feel called out.
Why?
But not undeservingly. Not undeservingly.
I'm sure if you were translating that from Japanese into English, you would word that correctly.
Probably, but I probably wouldn't notice it when I was picking feats, because I can be a little bit lazy about like really paying attention to that kind of stuff, which is why I benefit from having someone like you around.
Yeah. Okay, then we got Flames of Fell. Yep, that guy. Flames of Phlegm. Yeah. Phlegathos. Yep, that's the guy. Fairy Floss. The Flames of Fairy Floss. Your intelligence and charisma go up by or intelligence or charisma, not both. Go up by 1. When you roll fire damage, you can re-roll any ones, but you got to use a new roll even if it's 1. And when you cast a spell with fire damage, you can cause flames to wreathe you until the end of your next turn. The flames don't harm you, but they shed bright light within 30 feet, dim light for additional 30 feet, and when the flames are present, any creature within 5 feet of you that hits you must take 1d4 fire damage. Pretty cool, actually. Yeah. Pretty damn cool. Fire. Wait, how long does it last? Until the end of your next turn. Okay, till the end of your next turn. I was like, if that lasts like a minute or something, that's baller. But it only lasts like 1 turn. Yeah. But still pretty good, because it's whenever you deal fire damage, so it could be every turn.
It's whenever you cast a fire spell.
Yeah, so firebolt.
Firebolt.
Just do it every turn. It's got a hit though, right? Nope.
No,
cool.
That.
Yep, that's awesome. Just when you cast it. That is sick. I really like that. I'm gonna make a tiefling.
Spam it and let him hit you to death.
I'm gonna make a tiefling. All right. Infernal Constitution is the other one. So yeah, you get an extra con by 1, which is really good because it could increase your hit point maximum. You gain cold and poison resistance, and you have advantage on saving throws to be poisoned. Orcish Fury gives you strength or con by 1. When you hit with a melee attack using a simple or martial weapon, you can roll 1 additional weapon dice an additional time and add it to the extra damage of the weapon's attack type. Once you use the ability, you can't use it until you finish a short long rest, so it's pretty good. It's like once per short rest you can do a little bit of extra damage basically.
Not with an improvised weapon.
No, unfortunately. Yeah. Or with a melee monk weapon attack. Yeah, which we found out from the monk in the party. Immediately after you use Relentless Endurance, which is the one that makes when you take damage, you can resist damage. When you knock down... Oh, no. When you... Yeah, one of them. Anyway, you can use your reaction to make a weapon attack, which is pretty cool. Prodigy, we talked about that one before. That's you get a skill, a tool, and a language, and you get expertise in one of your skills. Second Chance, increase Dex, Con, or Charisma by 1. When a creature you can see hits you with a melee attack, no, not a melee attack, sorry, just an attack roll, you can use your reaction to force them to re-roll the attack. So that's kind of like Lucky again.
Except it's for you, not
it's
your party.
Yeah, that's true.
It's still a pretty good...
It is pretty good. Once you use the ability, you can't use it again until you roll initiative at the start of next combat or until you finish short long rest. So basically you can use it in every single combat.
No, because you should be doing 2 combats between short rests.
No, but I mean this says once you use this ability, you can't use it again until you roll initiative at the start of a combat.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or until you start or finish your short or long rest. So yeah, it's either short rest, long rest, or until you just start a new combat.
Hang on. Do you roll an initiative if somebody gets a surprise attack on you, though?
You do, but not until the next round.
No. Say you're the halfling and you've used it in combat.
Yeah.
And then you're walking through a forest.
Yep.
And a creature shoots you.
Surprises you?
Surprises you.
Yeah, you wouldn't get it then, because it's surprise round is before you roll initiative.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, technically
there's no surprise round, so...
Yeah, technically you would probably... Yeah, you would just...
As a DM, you'd probably have to make a ruling.
Yeah, you'd just go well, you haven't rolled initiative yet. There's no initiative order yet. You've been attacked and you took damage, or it missed, or whatever.
I wouldn't be harder for that, because that sounds... Because
I'm
pretty sure
the wording
there isn't an errata for it.
The wording there is when a creature you can see hits you with an attack roll.
Yeah.
So if you're getting attacked in a surprise round, chances are you haven't seen them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
My issue with this is, my understanding is, once he goes to shoot you, everybody rolls initiative.
No.
If you have seen them.
Yeah, it says if you can't see them. If you can't see them, then you can't use it. Yeah.
So if someone goes to shoot you, you're not going to roll initiative because you don't know they're there because you haven't seen them.
But there's no point putting the second part of it, the short or long rest, because you're going to get it every time you roll initiative.
Yeah, but
you roll initiative as soon as combat starts.
That could be like the DM's discretion in the situation. Could be like, like he could determine when you roll initiative, right? Which means then you could limit when you want someone to use this ability. Like if you don't want them to use this ability, you could just be like, he shoots an arrow at you. You saw him shoot the arrow at you. But you don't have your ability yet because we haven't started an initiative or whatever, like...
You go to camp at night and you're starting a long rest, but you haven't finished it. You go to sleep, you get attacked in your sleep. You're not rolling initiative because they've got the initiative on you. You don't roll initiative until possibly the next turn.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it depends on...
I think rules is written is you roll initiative at the start of the combat. The combat starts as soon as someone shoots at you.
Not necessarily. If it's a surprise, if you don't see them, then they're going to get an attack before the initiative is activated. I think that's like the whole That's like the whole premise behind the surprise round thing. Yeah, I think that's... I don't know, is there even rules for surprise rounds anymore in the DMG? Like, I don't even remember.
There's a surprised condition. It's not a surprised round.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Or, yeah, I guess that's sort of the same thing, but... let's move on for now, and I'm sure John's looking that up. So squat nimbleness.
It's the inner rules law in me is indeed looking it up.
Yes, yeah, I thought so. Which is very handy for me, because that means I don't have to. So squat nimbleness, you get extra strength or dex by 1. Increase your walking speed by 5. You gain proficiency in acrobatics or athletics. And you have advantage on strength, athletics, or dex acrobatics checks you make to escape from being grappled, which is pretty cool. Wood Elf magic is you learn a magic of primeval woods, which you reveal to protect your people. You learn blah 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 blah. You get Long Strider, Pass Without a Trace, each which you can cast once without using a spell slot.
Yes.
You gain the ability to cast these 2 spells in a way when you finish a long rest. Wisdom is your spell card. Oh, yeah, there's another one. Oh, you learn a druid cantrip as well.
It's on 5e tools.
What is?
The order of combat. A typical combat encounter is a clash between 2 sides, a flurry of weapon swings, feints, parries, etc., 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 etc. The next thing under the order of combat is surprise. A band of adventurers sneaks up on a bandit camp, springing from the trees to attack them. A gelatinous cube glides down a dungeon passage, unnoticed by the adventurers until the cube engulfs one of them. In these situations, one side of the battle gains surprise over the other. The DM determines who might be surprised. If neither side tries to be stealthy, they automatically notice each other. Otherwise, the DM compares the dexterity, stealth checks of anyone hiding with the passive wisdom perception score of each creature on the opposing side.
Mm-hmm.
Any character or monster that doesn't notice a threat is surprised at the start of the encounter.
Say what surprised is?
If you're surprised, you can't move or take an action on your first turn of the combat, and you can't take a reaction until that turn ends. A member of a group can be surprised even if the other members aren't. The next thing down is initiative. I feel like they're very specifically put this in this order.
Go back and read it again. Where does it say you don't roll initiative?
It doesn't, but initiative is the next thing down.
Yeah, you're surprised, but you still roll initiative.
Yeah, but you get an attack roll.
It doesn't say that you do roll initiative either.
You'd have to go to the initiative. It says at the start of combat, everybody rolls initiative.
Right, so where do you define the start of combat? The fact that surprise comes before initiative indicates to me that surprise is not counted as the start of combat. The start of combat begins after surprise.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's just determining who's surprised. It's not determining the initiative order. So, like,
So the way that I read this, the way that they've ordered everything, it indicates to me that the reason they've put surprise before initiative is because a surprise round is not considered the start of combat specifically.
No, there is no surprise round.
No, there's no round. So what happens is
round.
Yeah, what happens is like
the first round, people can be surprised.
Yeah, which means they don't get to do anything.
The other thing to do is to look at what it says in the assassin subclass of rogue, where it actually talks about you get a bonus if they haven't moved in combat. So if they're surprised, that assassin bonus goes for longer. But it gives a second bonus for them if they're surprised as well.
So what someone in the chat, Hathos, actually said is exactly what I think is right. Is basically it says you don't get actions, reactions, or movement in the first round if you're surprised, which basically means you roll initiative. And if it's whatever the initiative order is, it doesn't matter. Say it goes like you, then 2 bad guys, then your friend, then another 2 bad guys. If the bad guys have the drop on you, even though you've got the highest initiative, your turn just gets skipped because you don't get to do anything because you're surprised.
So the thing is, this then takes us back to the halfling feat.
Yeah.
In which case, John's point that it's pointless is valid.
Yeah. That's my point. My point is that it's pointless to say all on a short and long rest because everybody rolls initiative on the first round.
Which is why the thing is, it never says.
So the thing
where does it say that you roll initiative when the first shot is fired. It doesn't say that either. So I think we're making assumptions that aren't in the rules.
At the start of combat.
Yeah, and that's up to the DM
what is
to
the definition of the start of combat?
And that's up to the DM to determine when to roll initiative.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm pretty damn sure somebody's shooting an arrow at you. Combat
but the problem is, if you don't see the arrow being shot or hear the arrow being shot, you don't know the arrow's been shot until it hits you in the face or until it misses and then you hear it.
And again, we come back to semantics. Right. An arrow shot is not combat. Combat is when two people are fighting each other. When an arrow is shot, that's like sniping. That's not necessarily combat.
I'd say it is.
Sniping is not combat. Sniping is entirely separate from combat.
I think it depends because it depends if you notice whether or not someone is shooting at you. If you notice they're shooting at you, combat started. It doesn't matter if
I agree with
you're the only one being shot at. But if you don't notice they've shot at you and they miss, nothing's happened in your mind. You have no idea what's going on. You're just walking along.
I think what you're talking about, though, is actually what they're defining as surprised. You don't know what's happening. So you don't have movements, you don't have reactions, you don't have any of that because you're surprised. Now, say it's a rogue who's really good at hiding, shoots at you, you don't notice, he misses. You might even be surprised in the second round. That's up to the DM.
Yeah.
The combat has started, though. He only gets to attack on his initiative.
So what I'm trying to say is, technically, what we're describing is that is not actually combat. If a rogue fires at you and you don't notice it, it's not combat. It's not combat until you get hit and you realize you are in combat. And that is where you should be rolling initiative.
Okay, Leela, in 5th edition, you can't shoot outside of combat. You have to start combat to shoot at somebody.
I don't know. That's a bit grey too. I think that's a bit grey.
That sounds like taking things for advantage.
I would be more inclined to follow Leela's reasoning as a DM.
It's the only way that particular rule in the Halfling Feat actually makes any sense. Without that rule is completely invalid.
And heavens knows.
So that's a clue.
But it could be.
It's not. I don't think that's wrong. I think that's a clue about how their intentions about surprise and initiative and combat.
Okay, I'm going to go back again and say I like the way you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense that way.
But with the rules as written, that's not.
But point to these rules. I don't know where you're getting that from.
It's in, if you go to the player's handbook.
We're talking about. Where it talks about.
I think
it's in chapter 9 of the player's handbook.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone has that, can you read that out? Because I'm curious about this. Because I think that
when combat starts, every participant makes a dexterity check to determine their place in the initiative order.
But where is the point that defines
the
combat?
DM determines when anybody...
When they talk about attack rolls, that's also in that combat section because you can only do it in combat. Everything that happens in that chapter 9 can only be done in combat.
So it goes step by step. 1, determine surprise. 2, establish positions.
Yep.
And roll initiative.
3, roll initiative.
So before you start doing the mechanical of the combat stuff, the DM determines if anybody's surprised. So he might go, okay, John, you're surprised, but Leela's character Matt can see in the dark, so she's not surprised. Okay, now everybody, include the monsters, rolls initiative.
In which case, that particular rule is completely contradictory.
But also, in the initiative, it does say there is flexibility for the DM to say, because he's sniping, he just goes first. So he doesn't even roll initiative. If the highest initiative is 26, the DM just puts it at 27.
But when the halfling rolls initiative, that rule is already in effect.
Yes.
So it's not about this. It's not about the sniper. It's about the halfling. So that's
yeah.
I feel like there's something's broken there.
They may have errated some of that, and we just aren't seeing it because they've been updated in our players' handbooks, and that particular feat hasn't been touched again yet, and it's just slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, or just the way they worded it just meant that you can't, like, if combat, if I'm not going to say if combat ends, but if all the enemies in the combat that you're in are dead, but your initiative order is still in effect, then you can't use it again when more enemies show up, essentially. So like you could be in a combat and be in initiative order, and then you defeat all the enemies, but you're running away from a boulder, and you've got to roll initiative order to get out of this tunnel with this boulder, Indiana Jones style, and you take turns in initiative order, rolling and rolling and rolling. Then at the end of the tunnel, once you get out, there's a bunch of goblins. You're still in the same initiative order, so you can't use it again. It's still technically the same.
From a position of logistics, my answer to that, if I had any say in it, would have to be that specific wording about combat begins when is incorrect, because it makes no sense in terms of the surprise rule and that particular feat.
Well,
it makes more sense that combat begins when the DM says combat begins.
Yeah, of
you
course.
would roll initiative when the DM says, okay, now everyone roll initiative.
Yeah, and I think that's fine.
For me, as in a position of being someone who has to make these calls with translation, etc., with logistics, I think that has to make more sense.
That's how I would do it.
DMs will play it.
Yeah, that's how I would do it. I would be like, surprised, these guys get a couple of shots off. Okay, they've done their thing. Okay, everybody roll initiative. But like, how it actually goes is, surprise is determined. Now everybody roll initiative. Okay, you were surprised. You don't get to do anything on your turn. Next person in the initiative order. That's how it actually goes.
So my question is then, if we were following those rules specifically, as DMs, how would you handle that halfling feat rule?
Well, I would do it the way I would do it the exact way you're describing that you want to do it, and the way that I said that I think is right too, which is the exact same. Is like these guys would get a surprise on you. You wouldn't be able to use it, and then initiative would start, and then you could use it from then on. Like. And the other big part of that is a lot of the time when you get surprised, you don't see your opponents coming. So that's kind of the big hit, is you can't see them hit you if you're surprised by them a lot of the time. Sometimes you might see them and still be surprised because you caught flat-footed or whatever. But yeah, I would probably rule it as like, you can't use it until initiative starts. Your initiative won't start until after they get their attacks in from their surprise.
I think they probably worded it that way because of this the continued sort of initiative hangover that Mitch was talking about.
Yeah, like when you're going from, I think
that's more what
like,
they were sort of aiming at in that case.
Yeah, when you're going from like a combat to an initiative order style escape or some other kind of thing that is still in the same initiative order that you're acting in, and then a second set of like enemies show
no
up.
One's noticed, and it's going to drop on you at any second.
Yeah,
so
well, they could have just worded it. They could have just worded it wrong. And like,
yeah, I was gonna say, I'm assuming it's just worded bad.
Yeah, they could have just worded it wrong too. I mean, there's a lot we've kind of talked over, but I think we all kind of agree the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense to do it the way that like you get it at the start of a new combat kind of thing. But you can't use it if you can't see what's attacking you.
But it also does say when a creature you can see.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're being ambushed and the creature's hidden, it doesn't matter what
you're not going to see him. Exactly.
You can't use it anyway. You've got it.
Yeah.
Because you've rolled initiative, but you can't use it because it's hidden.
He's still hidden, and you're.
About the only time I could see where you could use it, and maybe still be surprised, is if say I'm standing right in front of the halfling, and he says something that pisses me off, and I just kick him in the face.
Yeah, now, then he could use it.
As a DM, you determine he's surprised, he can't do anything. I make the attack roll, and he goes, no, re-roll it, because I can see you. And I've rolled initiative.
Well, no, maybe not, because the DM might be like, oh, you kick him in the face? Cool, roll your attack roll.
Hang on.
Is there initiative? No.
Hang on. Sorry, no. I forgot to read the next rule. You can use your reaction to force the creature.
Yeah.
So he doesn't get reactions during the surprise round. He can't use it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So effectively, it doesn't really matter when you get it. You get it once a combat.
Yeah, pretty much.
And and my original point was,
you can't use it if you're surprised.
Saying you get it back when you finish your rest,
or when you get an initiative. It doesn't really. Yeah, you could just.
Once you get it, once you get it for rolling initiative, saying you get it at a rest as well is pointless.
Is redundant. Yeah, it is. It's redundant. You don't need it when you rest because you get it when you get initiative, which is whenever you need it anyway.
For the record, I just want to say that for anyone listening, it probably sounds like we're arguing for the sake of arguing, but the way that I see it, this is the entire point of having a podcast like this and talking about feats.
We're trying to,
if we don't talk these things over,
make things clear for
what's
everybody.
the point of just reading out the feats,
What are you talking about? This is important stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I think we've all kind of come to a consensus on this, but I'm glad that we had the discussion about it.
But this also comes back to something I've talked with Andrew about a lot, and we've just and we decided amongst the two of us that rules as written is where you start, and what we're arguing about is rules as written. If rules as written don't work, and they don't because of what you're saying there, then you go as rules as intended. What did they intend? They obviously don't intend them to get to use it.
I think the biggest thing is like if you think something works one way, and then you have other people saying like, oh no, the way it's written, it actually means it works this way. At that point, the DM has to go, okay, they have to either go, okay, yeah, no, that makes more sense and I'll do it that way. Or they can be like, no, well, I think it works this way, so that's how I'm going to rule it for this situation. And if the player disagrees, that's fine. You can disagree. And then the DM just has to be, acknowledging of that and go like, okay, well, you chose this feat because you thought you could use it in situations, but I don't really think it should work like that. So, maybe you can change your feat, like choose a different feat, or something like that. Like be respectful of each other in a way that you're trying to both continue having fun. So, talk about. Communicate with each other and don't just like argue your point because that's how you want the rule to work. Ultimately, the DM is the one to decide whether or not it works that way.
Absolutely.
And if he's like, this is causing too many headaches, then it's just going to be like, okay, well, I'm just not going to deal with that. So you can't just choose a different feat. Like,
I think another important thing is, and this is a courtesy thing, which I'm admittedly really bad at this one. Don't over argue it during the game.
Yeah. Leave that stuff for later. Yeah. Message each other.
Then we'll message each other and chat about it when we have time. We'll do it during the podcast.
Or we'll discuss it in the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can talk about this on the podcast. That's what it's there for. All right. I want to move on. I don't even know if we're going to get to items or anything tonight, to be honest. But I want to move on to spells. I've got the Player's Handbook open, and I have Xanathar's open because they both have some interesting the Player's Handbook's got the main spell list, but the Xanathar's got some new spells in it which are really, really cool.
Can we go through the Xanathar's one? Because
we'll go through the Xanathar's one.
Those ones.
Okay, so most of the spells in the PHB are the same old spells that have been in D&D for forever.
Which, by the way, I'm going to say, I love that.
Forever ever. I think it's great.
I loved when 5th edition started. I could look at stuff and go,
yep.
Oh,
I know what that does.
Look,
I know what that does.
They've got all the same classes from 1st edition. And...
Yep. It's great.
Well, I mean, that kind of continuity is what makes a franchise a franchise. Otherwise, it's just different games.
Yeah. And I think...
We went back to, because 4 got it so wrong for so many players that they had to sort of go, okay, well, what really worked for us? And
so
they did the right thing.
I want to do a quick thing explaining about how spells work. Yeah, let's go with how spells work. So let's go class by class and explain just super quickly how each class uses their spells, because it will be, and how they know/learn their spells, because this could be a really good teaching moment for everybody, and it could also be a really good teaching for everybody else to me, because I get confused by it sometimes too. So
I'm just going to come right out and say this will be a huge refresher to me. I'm really rusty on casters.
You know what? You could do that just looking at bards and clerics.
Jump on in, Hato. Come on, buddy. Okay. So, you could. So basically, bards and clerics are like the two main examples, because they are basically the two polar opposites, I suppose. Not really polar opposites, but they're two kind of variations on how you learn/know spells. Well, I guess wizard too, but so basically bard learns spells. They just know them. They only learn a certain amount of them.
Yeah.
And once you pick them, you're stuck with them. Unless when you level up, you can change one in out for another one, and that's pretty much it. And then as far as spell slots go, they just have spell slots are kind of like you've got a certain amount of spell slots each day that you can use, and it's like, you know, there's a table that shows you how many you can use of each level. You can always upcast a spell, might not necessarily do anything extra. It might just do the same thing. It just means you can cast it at a higher level spell slot if you run out of lower level ones. You can't downcast. You can never downcast a spell. So that's basically the way that spells work. And yeah. Then clerics know their whole spell list. They know all of them. They know all the spells. They just know them. But they can only prepare a certain amount of them each day, and it's based off your level and your modifier, and I think that's about it.
I think they generally
proficiency as well.
Proficiency as well? Okay.
No, class level.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I thought I said that. Class level and your modifier. So
you don't get proficiency, do you?
I don't know. Okay, no, the proficiency comes into play with your spell DC. So that's the other thing. When you're attacking with creatures, the DC that they have to use to determine whether or not they pass or fail, or depends on your modifier and proficiency and stuff.
I go back a bit old school, and I'm thinking about them.
Yeah.
Spontaneous casters and prepared casters.
Yeah, that's I kind of think that's a good way of doing it.
Bards are the spontaneous casters. They only know a certain amount of spells.
But they can just
whip them off.
Yep.
Whereas in 3rd edition, the prepared casters actually had to put, I want this 3rd level spell memorized.
Yep.
And this, they don't have to do that anymore, but they pick which spells they want for the day.
See, I was so confused when I first looked at 5th edition and spells, and the thing I was confused about was the way that clerics knew the way because I thought clerics were like bards, right? I thought it was like, okay, so I know this many spells, and out of the spells that I know, I can prepare this many spells. That's what I thought it was like, but no. You know all the spells. All the spells are there to pick from, but you can only prepare a certain amount of them per day.
Every long rest, you're like, dear God, can I use this today?
Exactly.
I think that's a great example of how 5e has simplified certain things.
Yeah, it's simplified a lot
but without oversimplifying them. It doesn't make it too easy.
Oh yeah, there's still
takes away that hassle portion.
There's an extensive list of spells to choose from that are super frustrating to pick when you're trying to like go, am I going to need this tomorrow? Fuck, I don't know. Shit, what are we going to do tomorrow? We're supposed to fight a dragon. Should I take Revivify? Might not be worth it.
It's actually possible that bards actually know more spells than clerics can prepare.
At high levels, it is very possible.
High level, because clerics know what is it? Their wisdom
modifier plus their level.
Cleric level.
Yeah.
So if you're a 1st level cleric with a
plus
3 wisdom, you'd know the same as a 1st level bard who just know 4, because bards have a set number that they know.
Yep.
But no, because 20th level bard only knows 22 spells.
No, they get the magic secrets as well.
Yeah, they get magic secrets like 3 different times, 2 different times.
But clerics also get spells from their domain.
And they get Channel Divinity as well. Well, Channel Divinity is not really a spell, but yeah, they do get domain spells, which are automatically prepared.
So you'd be expecting, if you're a 20th level cleric, not including domain spells, you'd know 24 or 25 spells.
24 or 25 plus an extra plus you get like 2 or 3 at like 1st, 4th, 8th and 16th or whatever it is, so you'd know an extra 9 spells basically on top of that, so you'd know about 30 something spells.
You'd know about you could have prepared any day.
Maybe like that might be like everything. You might be able to prepare like everything on the cleric spell list almost. Actually, maybe not. There's quite a fair few.
I'll tell you what, there's some damn good cleric spells.
Yeah.
Just not very many good attacking clerics.
Well, Life Cleric gets 9 spells that they just know when they're 20th level. Like, they just always have them prepared.
Yeah,
that doesn't count towards your prepared numbers.
Yep. And then Druids are the same as clerics. So Druids are the same. Druids know all their spells. They just know them, and they just have to prepare a certain amount of them per day. Paladins are like bards where they learn their spells, right?
No. Are they more like clerics?
I honestly can't remember.
I think paladins and rangers are more like. Most of them are more like. Most of the classes are more like clerics.
Okay.
Yeah, paladins choose charisma modifier plus half their paladin level rounded down for prepared spells for the day.
Okay, and then rangers too, I imagine. Very, very similar.
Yeah.
Sorcerers are
like bards.
Sorcerers like bards. They just know there's certain spells. They just have to
often get extra spells from their
whatever their
Rangers don't prepare. They learn.
Rangers learn. Okay, Rangers learn. So Rangers are like bards. Sorcerers are like bards.
2 first level spells of your choice from the Ranger spell list.
There you go.
Spells known column. Yeah. So when you level up, you can change them, but they only know a certain amount.
And then you get to the wildly different class.
Warlocks.
Who
problem child.
Yeah, who prepare. I think they prepare them like bards, but they cast them in a completely different system.
Yeah. Warlocks get 2 spell slots. That's it. But
if you were using the
level up with you.
if you're using that Unearthed Arcana thing, the spell versatility, they can change 1 spell per
long rest,
I believe.
Yeah,
when you finish a long rest, you can change 1.
That's like fine for like I think a short campaign when you're trying to test out a class, but in a long campaign, it's a bit overpowered because you can constantly because you can constantly change your spells whenever you feel like it. Which
it's a lot of extra hassle trying to figure out encounters when you don't know what the warlock has.
Yeah, when you don't know what they're gonna do. Yeah, but warlocks are really cool.
I think the interesting thing with warlocks though is they actually only get up to 5th level slots.
Yes.
Any spells you see over those, they can actually only cast once a day. I think it is.
Yeah, when they get Mystic Arcanum.
Arcanum, or whatever it is. Yeah, you learn one of those spells and you can cast it once a day.
Yeah, warlocks are very different.
Yeah.
Oh, it's once per long rest, not once per day.
Yeah, which is also why I think when we were talking about multi-classing, I said paladins are good to multi-class with
warlocks. Yeah,
because they can burn through the warlock spells that they get from their pack.
Yep.
And then get them back on a short rest. Because that's the other thing with warlocks. They get their spells back on a short rest.
Yep.
All the other classes only get them back on a long rest.
So at 8th level, you're just burning 5th level Divine Smites and getting them back on a short.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then wizards.
Wizards are my favorite when it comes to actually, making full use of every spell you can get your hands of. I think wizards are the best because you can today I'm going to prepare every offensive spell I know, but I can still ritual cast all these really useful things like comprehend language and stuff like that.
Detect magic.
And detect magic. You can be able to cast that as a ritual.
Which if you've ever watched us play, you will notice we just about spam detect magic.
Yep.
I mean, it takes 11 minutes or some shit, but
Yep, constantly using detect magic as a
ritual.
ritual.
This is assuming somebody in the party has it.
Yeah,
it's usually either John or me. It's busted.
Yeah.
I can't play a caster that can learn it without taking it.
The other fun one at low levels, if you talk about individual spells, is Identify.
Yes.
And they changed that from the previous editions. Like in the previous editions, you didn't just need 100 gold piece pearl; it burnt it up every time you used it.
Yeah. Now you just.
So if you ever go back and play, I've actually still got a CD copy of the original Icewind Dale game. And every time you go to get a it's old as God. Every time you go to get a item identified, it costs you 100 gold pieces.
Yep.
Because of that.
Wait, so I want to go back for a second. Wizards know a certain amount of spells.
Like a cleric.
Wait, do they know all of the spells?
No.
No.
Spell book.
When
a certain amount in their spell book.
So
when
wizards,
you start,
that's what I mean.
First,
wizards are a bit finicky.
At first level, your spell book has 6 first level wizard spells, and 3 cantrips. You can prepare a number of spells equal to your intelligence modifier plus your wisdom, your wizard level. So if you have at the start, you've got +3.
So wizards are like a combination of clerics and bards in the sense that you know a certain amount of spells, like a bard does. You only know a certain amount of spells.
Yeah.
But from those spells, you can only prepare a certain amount of spells, like a cleric does.
Yes,
but the benefit is that you know more, right?
To the extent they have the added benefit
than a bard
of
does.
If a cleric finds a spell scroll, he's like, cool, I get a free use of this spell scroll. If a wizard finds a spell scroll, he's like, I'm going to spend some time to put that in my book, and I know that forever.
Yes,
exactly. And they can also learn them off other wizards.
Yes.
Spells at level 20, and then whatever spell scrolls you find.
Yeah. They can also talk to other wizards and spend money to copy out of their spellbook.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is actually another great way of getting a party into an adventure.
Yes.
When a higher level wizard says, if you do this for me, I will teach you this 5th level spell.
Yeah.
So, taking a moment to talk about scrolls.
Yes.
I'm going to say something and then you're going to yell at me and tell me why it's not that way.
Let me stop you right now.
You know it so well.
I'm going to yell at you before you even start talking. No, I'm just kidding. Go
for dead.
I wish I could see, like, the one thing that I want to see happen with spell scrolls is that if you find a scroll, any caster can use that scroll, whether it's something that is on their list or not. It's what I would like to see. Now tell me why that can't happen.
Because that's why there's a list of spells
that the
casters can class.
But why, like, logistically, is that a bad thing?
Because wizards learn their spells by putting certain arcane symbols in their book, and that's how they know how to cast them. Bards hum them. Clerics,
okay, you're still telling me mechanically.
No.
Okay.
Think about
this as well. I'll put it in a little bit lore-wise then.
No. Can I?
Yeah, go.
Okay. So you've got the exact same spell from a cleric and a wizard.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover between spells. Yeah.
So you've got the exact same spell. A cleric knows how to cast it because I pray to God and he puts it in my head. And when I say the prayer, oh, great Lathander, please grant me your light to smite so-and-so. The wizard chants something in some arcane language that nobody else does to do the exact same thing. So they use 2 different ways to get to the same spell.
Yes.
So when you pick up a wizard scroll, it has the wizard way of doing it on it. If you're a cleric, you don't know the wizard way of doing it.
So what I'm saying is that's still, you're telling me mechanically why a certain caster can't cast a certain way.
Because a cleric doesn't know how to read arcane runes. A wizard doesn't know a divine prayer.
Yeah, that's the kind of that's kind of the sense of it.
If your blueprints don't match up to the materials that you're trying to do it with, it just won't work.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, what I would like to see happen personally, just because it would save everybody so much trouble, so much of the time, and it would allow people to do things they can't normally do, is to have spell scrolls. Hang on, let me just finish. Is like the whole point of what I brought up is what I would like to see is to have spell scrolls be something that anyone can use. And that would be in my head, that would be a whole new mechanic, because it wouldn't be calling on Lathander, it wouldn't be doing this, it wouldn't be doing that. It would be a different mechanic entirely. It would be, this character picks up this spell scroll, he reads the scroll is the magic. They're not drawing on their own form of magic, they're using the scroll.
Yeah, the scroll is the magic.
Actually, Leela, to an extent, you're actually correct, because the way it works, the wording is, it only has to be on their list. If I'm a wizard, and so I'm looking at the spell Absorb Elements, which is in Xanthus, say that was a cleric spell and a wizard spell. I don't know if it's a cleric spell. As a wizard, I do a 2nd level version of Absorb Elements on a scroll. I give it to the cleric. It's on his list. He can use it.
Yeah.
He knows how to cast it. So what it is clerics learn how to make 1-bedroom houses, 3-bedroom houses, but not 2-bedroom houses.
Yeah, but I think the issue here is that, like, if you have a spell that a wizard and a cleric can cast and the bard finds that scroll, he can't use it. That's what the issue I think she's
I guess my bigger issue is that if you have a party with a bard and a sorcerer, but no wizard or cleric, and you get a spell scroll through treasure, it's kind of useless and it's really disappointing.
You sell it. You sell it for like 1,000 gold.
I get that. But the whole point of finding a spell scroll is that it's exciting. You can cast this spell that you didn't have.
Leela, I'm going to say something now, and you're going to get very upset with me.
Yell at me.
But no, I'm not going to yell. But I'm just okay. You find a treasure hoard. There's 6 glaives. No one has proficiency, and no one can use glaives. They're too heavy. What do you do?
But glaives aren't as fun as spells.
That's my
what if it's a magical glaive, and when you pick it up, the fire starts on it, but you still can't use it because
you can't attune to it because you're not proficient.
I take a class.
Yeah.
I take a class that can use glaives. I cross class. Because we found it, and now it's not.
Then feel free to cross class into Wizard 1 so you can cast that scroll.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, it's kind of a little bit like I understand what you mean. It would make it more fun to just all of a sudden have a warlock that casts like mass cure wounds or something like that because he just picked up the scroll and he can use it now. It sounds great, but the problem with it is it can break some things.
The thing is, I think it could be useful if it was a one-time use thing.
They all are. Scrolls are
it's not like you can cast it all the time. It's not like a wizard. You can then put it into your spellbook and you can use it again and again.
The wizard can only do that if it's a wizard spell.
Just this once, you can use it, and now suddenly your party is healed. Thank God, because it turns out your healer was killed in the last battle.
No, not thank God. Thank paper.
Yes.
Can I say something? Can I say something on Leela's side?
Yeah, go. No, I kind of agree with Leela, but
I really miss the rogue ability use magic item. Where they can actually bypass a magic item's restrictions.
Yeah.
Because they're sneaky bastards.
I think.
Yeah.
I think
they could do it.
Yeah, I think like the scroll thing is like an okay idea, like in premise, but when you look at it, a lot of the time when you find scrolls in a treasure hoard, some modules say specifically what it is, but if you know what magic table it comes from, if you roll it randomly on a random magic table and it's like you get a scroll of divine smite, you don't have a cleric, no one can use that shit, whatever, like you've only got warlocks and sorcerers, none of them can use it, just re-roll a different spell scroll. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Or if it's part of a module and you if it's part of a module and like it says like it's a scroll of like speak with animals and you don't have a druid or a ranger or whatever, just like find what list that speak with animals scroll is on before the party loots it if you can, and then re-roll it to a different scroll that's on the list, or just pick a different spell. Like, it's kind of a little bit on the DM to make sure you can use a lot of the things that you can.
A different spell of the same level.
Yeah. It's kind of on the DM a little bit to just give you a spell scroll that you can use. Sometimes it's going to be like, oh yeah, you find a spell scroll and you can't use it, and it might just be like, oh, that sucks. But then you can sell it.
As a player, what I would then like to see happen is, depending on the circumstances. Like, I mean, obviously, if it's a fireball or something, that's a little bit OP. But if it's a scroll of speak to animals, and you know the party is about to go off into a forest, and maybe they don't have a druid, but maybe they really need to find an animal and talk to them, like, would it be the worst thing in the world? And I'm not, like, calling it or not or anything. I'm just saying, like, would it actually be the worst thing in the world for the DM to then say, well, you know what? It's not on your spell list, but I'm going to say that this is a special scroll and you can use it.
You know what we should do here?
That's not unreasonable, but that's really up to the DM depending on how they want to play it.
In that case, you could say it's not a spell scroll, it's like it's an enchanted token that gives you one use of this spell.
Yep,
but
exactly.
There's also an option where we could just homebrew a feat that lets someone cast from scrolls.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Or what if you made a
magic initiate feat?
A skill roll, depending on what magic it is you're trying to use, with a DC of like 20 plus the spell level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so if you're doing a druid ranger spell, it would be a nature check. If you're doing a cleric spell,
religion.
It would be a religion. If you're doing a wizard,
arcana,
arcana. If you're doing a sorcerer, it would depend on what kind of sorcerer they are.
Yeah. Or you could do like Like a bard one could be like a performance check.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Or maybe it's still an Arcana check.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of depends.
Yeah.
I mean, you
like
could.
the idea
Okay,
of
so I mean, I started this whole conversation, but we're not really here to rewrite the rules. I was just interested in hearing everyone's answers about that.
No, I think it's.
Now they're taking us so far off topic.
No,
it's on topic. It's to do with spells. It makes sense. Like, I think it's a good idea. But I think it. In general, your DM should be giving you scrolls that your party can use, if possible, and if not, then, well, sell them.
Now, because I'm enjoying the argument, do wands have the same limitation?
Wands do not.
Good question.
Wands do not. You can use wands without being a spellcaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I see wands are a little bit stronger than scrolls.
Yeah, because wands replenish. Well, you don't have. I mean, you can homebrew a wand. You can homebrew a wand to just say it has 3 charges of cure wounds, and that's
it's
it.
a broken one.
Yeah, it's just once you use 3 charges, it breaks. Like.
So I guess when you get into the discussion of scrolls versus wands, I mean, what that makes me feel then is that scrolls kind of become pointless. Like,
scrolls are like potions.
Yeah, they're like a one-use.
They're the entry-level magic items you get when you're really low levels.
Yeah.
You don't get excited about finding a potion when you're 15th level.
No.
You get excited
That's
about
fair.
finding a potion when you're second level.
I was about to ask, like, what's the benefit of scrolls over wands? But I guess that kind of answers the question. There isn't really a benefit because they're not meant to be as powerful as wands.
No, they're not. They're not. No, they're not. They're super beneficial for wizards, though, because like we said before, wizards can copy scrolls down into the spellbook, so they can learn new spells really easily that way.
Only the first time they find it. You find that 3rd magic missile scroll, and it's pointless.
Oh yeah, but then you've got an extra. Then you got an extra magic missile.
You've got an extra spell slot.
Yeah.
Yeah. To run out.
But I mean, that's the same with the 3rd glaive that you find.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. I've already got a glaive. I don't need another one. My one's fine. Yeah.
Unless you can fight 2-handed with a glaive.
No, you can't. You need 2 hands.
Is that when it's no longer item interaction to pull out the scrolls that you want? Because it takes your whole action to go through all your different scrolls to find out which one you want.
Yeah, you spend like 20 minutes trying to go through all of your scrolls to figure out which spell you want to cast.
No, it's fine. Just take keen mind. You remember exactly where it is.
Yeah, it was top left.
You see the wizard screaming at the cleric, I said alphabetical order, damn it! Not my level!
Or your spellcasting sidekick, is that what it is?
Yeah,
spellcaster sidekick.
Get like a sidekick.
Yeah.
Now alphabetize, bitch.
Alphabetizel.
I do like the idea of...
Sidekick said, what's the point? You're dyslexic.
I do like the idea of just like making a feat that I know Magic Initiate exists, so if you pick that, you can cast a wizard scroll even if you're a fighter, but I like the idea of just someone who can use any scroll. They don't get any cantrips or any spells. They can just read any scroll.
The problem is though
that's going to be an artificer class 4 eventually.
I think the problem with that is like because say if you're like a level 1 wizard and you pick up like a level 3 like spell, you technically have to roll
it until you're level 3.
No, you can, but you technically have to roll a Arcana check, and you have to. It's like 10. It's like.
Well, I mean,
is it 10 plus the 10 plus the spells level or whatever to use it?
Surely I'd add
that said, like
section for that.
Like what John just said, though, was that it would be good for an artificer. Artificers usually have a pretty high Arcana, so that could actually work.
It'd just be like a finicky thing, like that you just have to figure out like a decent set of rules that covers everything.
Just like math it out. Like the higher level you get, the less chance you have of screwing it up, kind of deal.
Yeah.
Depending on its spell level, kind of thing.
Yeah, or like you could just do what Leela's suggesting, and anyone can try and read the spell scroll, and just set like a DC, a base DC of like 15 plus the spell level, and then that means like.
Or you could even go as far as saying,
like 15
scroll.
Yeah, do like 15 plus the spell level for anyone who doesn't have that spell on their spell list, right? For anyone who does, can use it, like they already know. Oh yeah, like I know magic missiles, and they can just use it, right? But for anyone who doesn't know it and they try and use the spell, it'd be like 15 plus whatever the spell's level is to be able to try and use it.
And then the limiting factor will be how many fighters have the arcanal ability.
Yeah, exactly.
So a fighter
like next to none.
The chance of him pulling up is
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of why I originally said casters, because it just makes more sense that a caster would be able to read a scroll of some kind and use the magic in it.
I guess they can as long as it's a spell that they're capable of casting.
Well, you can also add
that's like saying though, why can't any scientist do that science?
It kind of is like that. It kind of is like
between biology and botany. Yeah, there's not much difference, and there'll be a lot of spells that's on both of them.
Yeah.
But if the difference is between biology and physics, well, they're very different sciences.
Yes.
There won't be as much crossover. So
but then again, that comes back to like the DC question. Like maybe a biologist can actually work out physics if they spend enough time reading that particular, I don't know, let's call it an essay rather than a scroll. But if they read this essay enough times, maybe they can work that out, and maybe they can try and do that science.
I made my basic science roll.
The problem is
I get to use journal article.
The problem is once you read a spell scroll, it's done.
Yeah.
It's done, dusted.
Like it's done.
Okay, so hang on. Let me rephrase that. So let's not call it an essay. Let's call it a tool.
So you can't
it's
study
a tool
it. You can't really
made, and a biologist should be able to potentially figure that out because they've been trained in basic sciences.
Yeah, and then
does that make sense?
Yeah, the thing is though, like they'll get one attempt at using it.
Yeah, if you botch it, it's over.
Right.
If they fuck it up, it's gone.
I'm okay with that. Yeah. Like if we were to use this kind of mechanic, I would be perfectly okay with that. Yeah. The ability to try and use it is what's important. Then again, say it's a wizard spell, right? And it's okay, let's use someone else other than a wizard. Say it's a cleric spell. A cleric picks up the scroll. They should be able to use it much easier than someone whose spell list is not on or a non-caster. But that doesn't mean that person cannot cast it.
Yeah.
You're looking for the Buffy the Vampire's version of magic.
Am I?
Did you watch Buffy?
Anyone can use
Absolutely,
magic.
But I'm not saying this.
Do you remember when Willow, before she became a witch, would open a spell book and her and the witch watchers and everybody, I know how to cast this because I have the Arcana skill, and they would do the spell.
I mean, yeah, to an extent.
It's a bit, yeah. I mean, I think they all had the ritual caster feat.
Yeah.
The problem is like, the only problem I see with that is like, I know you're saying like. Like, this person knows magic, so they should be able to use the spell. But if it's not on their spell list, then technically they can't use the scroll. But then a fighter who doesn't know any magic, technically it's not on his spell list either, because he doesn't have a spell list, right? Yeah. So, like, those two people, a cleric and a fighter, are in that situation with this magic missile spell scroll, are equally adept at both reading the same thing, even though one of them actually knows magic and one of them has no idea about magic. So that's where it becomes a little bit.
Which comes back to the DC. Because
I can put this in a more modern way. Say you're a police officer, right? Why can't a police officer use a machine gun? Because they're not trained in it, like a soldier is. But a soldier can use a pistol because he is trained in it. So the spell list for a soldier is pistol, rifle, machine gun, but the spell list for a policeman is just pistol, rifle, stun gun. But a soldier can't use a stun gun because he's not trained in it.
So, like, I see, that's where I still have a problem, because, like, what I'm kind of proposing, I suppose, is I'm just making up an entirely new, feature here.
That's fun.
And it's kind of what Mitch said earlier, is you would have a DC for it, right? So, theoretically, what would happen is a fighter would not be on the same level as a cleric, because a fighter should have their stats in a different pool to the clerics. They would have a much lower chance of succeeding at casting that spell than the cleric would. But you then have the option of, do I take the risk of trying to use this scroll? Am I in a position where I really need to try it and I need that more than I need the money to sell it? So you have the choice. I can go and sell this because it's probably not going to work, or I can attempt to use it in this situation where I really need this spell to save everybody's lives.
Is it funny that you started off saying you didn't want mechanical reasons for it, but you're giving like a mechanical is exactly what you want? Because
so I mean, we've kind of come full circle.
Yeah, because I can give a great role-playing reason for why that doesn't work.
Yeah.
The fighter picks up the cleric scroll to use it, and the god says no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple as that. I'm going to cast this cleric spell. No.
Nope.
Well, like the cleric's like, I'm going to cast this wizard spell.
Wizards,
oh no, I don't know how to bend reality to my will.
I was going to say, but the wizard picks it up and looks at it and goes, Lathander, can you please cast? Because he knows that's what you have to do to cast that spell.
Right, but kind of what I'm coming back to is the idea that...
But the fighter doesn't know that because he's not trained to know that. He just thinks that you read out what it is, and he doesn't know the proper mindset. He doesn't know how to cast magic.
Right, so like what I'm coming back to is the idea that the scroll is a tool. You're not asking Lathander, you're asking the scroll,
but
almost.
If it's a cleric spell on that, you literally are. That's literally what their spells are. They are prayers to the gods to do things.
Yeah.
It also comes down to an issue where if people had the ability to just imbue like spells into items that didn't have any sort of, tether to a god or, a nature spirit or the arcane power, if they could just do that without any of those limitations, everyone would be throwing magic everywhere. There'd just be chaos.
I guess I kind of want to see the ability to do that.
You just want a high magic campaign. That's what you want. I'm on to you, Leela.
No, not necessarily. I just, like I said,
I'm
like in that case where you pick up a scroll and you can't use it and you really need it, like it would be great to have some kind of ability to use it.
Yes, and the ability to use it is called being a wizard or a cleric or a bard or a druid or a sorcerer or a warlock or someone that can cast spells.
Or a wand or a staff that doesn't require attunement.
Yeah. Like that's,
I know what we often have casters in our party who can't use a spell that we find on a scroll.
Yep. And like I said before, it's a little bit on the DM.
Most of the time, it doesn't bother me that much.
Just take it to your local library / scroll shop and see if they'll swap it for one that you can
I trade you? I'll go trade
you. You might not have the time for that. You're in a dungeon. You're about to fight a boss. You're about to fight
Make better life choices.
Boss that is weak to fire.
Make better life choices.
Leela, you gotta remember saying, Leela, if it doesn't work as a scroll, it'll still work as a torch.
That's true. Pretty true.
Fucking expensive torch.
Give him a really good paper cut. Give him
a really expensive torch for about 30 seconds of light.
Give him a really good paper cut. A magic paper cut. You never know.
I'm honestly, at this point, I'm arguing for something that doesn't even exist. Probably will never exist. And I'm actually, all my questions have been answered. I'm just arguing because it's fun.
For right
now, I am arguing for the sake of arguing. So I'm gonna stop.
Whatever can store a spell inside a gem and anybody can use it.
Artificer can do that. Literally, the class of Artificer puts spells into things, and then you can give them to people so they can use them. Which is
why it would be interesting if an Artificer had that kind of subclass where they had a class where they can use any scroll. I think that could be an interesting.
You know what's funny is they could go, I read this scroll and put the scroll spell into this thing, and then they just give you the thing, and now you can use it. It just takes a bit of time.
If nothing else, you've given me inspiration to write up a homebrew feat.
Yep.
Yay.
Yep.
But like I said though as well, rogues used to be able to do that.
Yeah. I think
not just with scrolls. You can have a rogue that could pick up a Holy Avenger, convince the Holy Avenger that it was a 15th level paladin, and you should work for me.
Yep. Yeah, you could do it, but I feel like the reason for limitations on spell scrolls is because they don't want fighters picking up like fireballs and just using them and shit like that. Like I think that's the reason. It's like
fireballs don't fair. Fighters don't need fireballs.
Yeah, like your class.
Battle axe.
Your class is designed around not using magic because the option to multi-class is always there, so you can pick up magic. And as soon as you multi-class into a class, you can use the entirety of its spell list from the spell scroll.
Can you imagine a 17th level fighter runs into a room and he's like, oh, there's a big bad guy here. Luckily, I bought these 3 disintegrate spell scrolls and just action surges twice and casts 3 disintegrates in one turn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, like, I still think that the DC is really important in this conversation.
Well, the DC
because it shouldn't be easy for the fighter to cast that spell.
Well, the DC is...
in theory, if he figures out how to cast one of them, he can cast all three of them.
Yeah. The thing is, like, the DC is always there if it's of a spell that is of a higher level than you can cast, right? So it doesn't matter if you know that, even if you know, like, if a wizard gets like a high level fireball spell or whatever it is, a high level, or like a wish spell even, right? If he doesn't know 9th level spells, but he picks up a scroll with the wish spell on it, the DC is ridiculously high. It's like 15. No, it's like, is it like 9? Is it 10 plus the spells level? I can't even remember what it is for reading spell scrolls. 10 plus this, I think it's like 10 plus the spell's level, right? To be able to read it if it's not of a level that you don't have a spell for. So if he's got to roll like a 19 plus Arcana roll to be able to effectively use the spell.
Not hard if you're 15th level.
Yeah, not hard if you're that high.
Damn impossible if you're first level.
Exactly. It's like ridiculously hard if you're low level.
The other thing with spells and something we often forget is
materials.
They're not all. Well, no. You don't have to worry about those scrolls.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I mean. Like, some of the scrolls have like so much material.
With casting, even with wizards, no two wizard casts even the same spell exactly the same way.
Yeah.
You translate them in the head, so you might have two clerics both casting Cure Wounds,
but they're saying different prayers. Yeah,
praise it is different to the other, but they can listen and go, "Oh, he prayed to his god that way, then I can pray to my god in a really similar way and do it." And wizards do the same thing. When they copy a scroll, they don't actually copy it word for word. They go, I don't like his mental shortcut. I'll use my own mental shortcut.
Yeah, because like an abjuration wizard learning like a divination spell, he's going to copy it down in the way that the abjuration wizard knows how to use that divination spell.
Yeah, that's why they get the copying things.
Assuming he's not an Eldritch Knight, that's when you have the fighter has no idea how to do this. It's completely out of his wheelhouse.
It's all gibberish.
Because even if he could do it, all he could do is read the spell. He doesn't know how to do the mental translation.
He doesn't know how to invoke the spell.
He doesn't know how to cast a spell.
Yeah.
But a warlock can do it, even though their magic is so different.
In my internal fantasy world, though, any person should have the ability to do something, unless it's part of their race or something. For example, if it's something that a person can learn to do, they should have a 0.01% chance of being able to pull it off. For example, with a cleric spell, that fighter is in the depths of despair. He's at the end of his rope, and he just screams out to the universe, "Lythander, please help me!" And Lythander listens.
No.
Just that once, because he rolled a critical. He rolled a 20, and
Lythander's not listening to him because he's never prayed to Lythander before. Lythander doesn't know he exists. He's got no recognition of him.
But there's no reason that he couldn't.
I get what you mean. And there's nothing to say a fighter can't cast a spell. He just has to learn how to do it. There's nothing to say that a wizard can't pick up a two-handed sword and swing it at somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's just got to learn how to do it.
I don't know how to. I've just got to learn how to do it. If I want to do it properly, at least, I've got to learn how to do it. And swinging a sword is way easier than casting a spell.
Yeah, the difference is...
That's totally fair.
The difference is Yeah, go.
But that's where the scroll comes into the equation. It's not like he's just suddenly getting down on his knees and praying to Lythander. He's found this scroll, and he's using it as a focus of some sort. And yes, it's a really long shot.
But he is technically just all of a sudden getting down on his knees and praying to Lythander. That is technically what he's doing.
But he's doing it using a prayer that he's found, and it's a prayer that Lythander is used to hearing.
Well, in the case of cleric spells, it's like I really need to call this person, but I don't know their phone number, so I'm just going to pick up this phone, dial a random number, and hope for the best. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. I look at statistics as there is always a chance. It is a very low chance, but it's there.
So then the DC for the spell is going to be like 50. You can't possibly ever get that number.
I mean, it should be something that is possible. It should be very high difficulty, but it should be possible.
Just roll 5d20s. If they all land on 20, you get it.
Yeah, 100.
I would be okay with that.
So percentile dice. Do a percentile dice. You roll a percentile dice. If you get 100, it works.
I still feel like rolling percentile dice is just the odds are still a lot higher than they should be.
1 in 100.
That still feels like a lot more of a chance of just like generic shady thief who's robbed and murdered everyone he's ever met, praying to a good god to cast Mass Cure Wound Scroll. That sounds like something he'd just flip you off for.
Yeah.
Please revive my fiendish warlock friend.
But in 3.5, they could do it.
And you know what's funny is like you could just be like, as a DM, you'd be like, yeah, okay, you read a spell scroll, and then you roll 100, and everyone's like, fuck yeah,
the heavens open up,
and then the heavens open up, and
a massive hand of just flipping you off comes out of the cloud.
Yep, it just goes nope, and then you just don't get the spell off, and the spell scroll fades from you.
That would kind of come down to me, like, to a question of what was the spell, what was the situation. Like, I mean, if it's like something that's really not a big deal, that's kind of like an asshole move on the DM's part.
But that's
like, the thing is what you're really.
I mean, if you're trying to cast Wish, like, fuck you. Absolutely.
Yeah, but then the things come. Then it comes back to. Well, it comes back to then is the DM should be giving your party spell scrolls of classes that know how to cast the spell scrolls that you're giving them, right?
Or if you have no casters, just give them infused magic items. Some artificer made it and lost it.
Yeah, or just give them healing potions. Like
what Leland's really looking for
is a high magic setting. I love it.
No, it's something story based.
I suppose so.
Not mechanic based. Like I've put.
Yeah, then scrolls are not what you want.
It's the MacGuffin. You go through and you find the scroll, and the scroll's the MacGuffin. So it doesn't matter who casts the MacGuffin, because it's the MacGuffin that you need to go on to the next part of the adventure.
Then you don't need it to be a spell scroll. You can just make it a magic infused item that you can use. Like, it doesn't have to be a scroll then. It can just be anything. Like, it doesn't have to be a scroll. Scrolls are like specifically for like casters to pick up and use like a sword.
That's what they're like. It's really lazy. You can think, because you can think of a scroll is like having a magical crossbow that loads itself because I'm too lazy to do it.
Yeah.
Artificers can do that.
I'm going to load the crossbow now because I want to shoot it tomorrow.
I guess what it comes down to is that I feel like random scrolls are just kind of less necessary as something in the game then. Like, you know, something, if a caster goes and buys a scroll, then it's useful. If they pick up a scroll, what's the point?
Well, this is the kind of a situation where, like, if the DM knows what the party is going to be before they make their campaign, then that's fine. They can do that. But if they don't know what the party's... If they make the campaign first and then like, hey guys, I've got a campaign, do you guys want to play? They don't know that no one's going to pick Wizard. So they have to random the scrolls because they don't know what people are going to pick.
But then why not just make magical items instead of scrolls to begin with? Like,
because magical items are infinitely more permanent than scrolls.
Yeah.
But that's why when I DM games, I often use homebrew games, homebrew adventures. I can put in stuff in the game that's based around the characters in my games when I run them.
And that's what I said a little bit.
You've been in my games, haven't you, Hater?
Oh yeah.
It's a little bit about foresight from the DM. Like, if you know a spell scroll's coming up and there's no one in the party that can use it, just change it out for a different spell.
Like the only thing I can suggest is if you're going to roll for random things, like if you don't want to do a scroll because you don't want this argument to happen, just say like it's a ring of spell storing, but it's made of wood, so it'll burn up after it's used.
Or just say.
I'm just gonna say for the record, DM. You can have scrolls. You can have random scrolls. I'm not going to complain in the campaign. I just wanted to like have this discussion and like feel out some possibilities and things.
I was going to say though, getting back to what I was talking before when I was talking about how I DM it, there's a flip side. When I play a game, like when I'm playing in Mitch's games and Evan's games, and I know they're using pre-purchased
modules,
I don't complain if I get a scroll that nobody can use for our characters, because it's not random. It's put in the adventure.
Yeah, it's been decided.
It's just as a player, it's something you've just got to learn to live with.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I understand that, and I've never like complained during a campaign about it or anything.
I think the other thing.
Why should we learn to live with it if there's another way around?
Because you got to realize the other thing is the entire world of the campaign isn't revolved around the players and their characters. The entire world of the campaign is just that. It's a world. There's things in the world that you might find that you can't use, and that's not
the person who died and lost their spell scroll to that horde of goblins wasn't like, oh shit, that party with no wizard's going to be here soon. I better swap this wizard scroll for a cleric one.
See, this is where me as a writer, I get really frustrated because I'm like, well, that would have been a better storyline.
Yeah, but the problem is, it's not everything is entirely revolved around the characters in the storyline, right? The bad guy's doing things in the background while you're not attacking him. He's not just sitting in his chair going like, can't wait for those guys to come attack me again. Like, he's out there building an army.
He couldn't use in Mordor.
Don't you have the mega stealthy rogue sneaking ahead of you to turn all the torches in the dungeons? You can change them out for the useful ones. That's a Skyrim joke if you don't get it.
Yeah. Yes. I just like to think of spell scrolls that we can't use. I think of it as a very lightweight way to carry coins.
Yep.
Yeah, they're lighter than gems.
Much lighter and worth a lot more.
If you get a scroll that's worth 100 gold, that weighs like a fraction. It's like 1 copper's worth of weight, and it's 100 gold.
Yep.
Yeah, no, like I said earlier, like at this point, I'm just kind of arguing other possibilities because I can. I mean, I totally understand the reasons and the mechanics. I think we've covered that fairly well.
Maybe we should go back to talking about
what
spells.
were we talking about?
Spells. Okay, so what... Okay, I want to know from everybody. Let's start from Ramsey. What is your favorite cantrip?
This is going to be weird, and for RP reasons, Shape Water is my favorite cantrip.
Is that a cantrip?
Yeah.
Cool. Gotta find the kit. Wait, it's a druid one?
No. It's in Wizard as well.
Wizard? It's in Wizard as well? Okay.
Yeah. If you've got an RP focused DM like me, because of your ability to change the properties of the water, you can use it in some unique ways. Like, say you get a door's locked, you can shape water into the locking mechanism and freeze the water, and it will break the lock.
Interesting. I like that.
Or you can do like a few other things with it, kind of like prestidigitation. It's got lots of creative use that you can do with it.
It does, considering you can carry a water canteen with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Survival.
It's a creativity thing for me.
Yeah, and that's like a lot of cantrips are based around that too. Let's go with John. What's your favorite cantrip?
Shocking nobody. Guidance.
Yeah, I thought so.
Probably just because of Frank.
It's so useful.
What, not mending?
It's so useful. Guidance
mending is fun, but you get so much more use out of guidance.
Yeah, guidance is like literally
I feel like I've heard you use mending more often than guidance is all.
I know.
It's one of those special
I spam the hell out of guidance. Almost every roll that's done out of combat has guidance.
Yep. Every ability check, basically. Guidance.
I'm waiting for Mitch to make me change it.
No, guidance is fine. The only problem with guidance is you've got to be standing next to them because it's a touch spell, and they've got to roll guidance before they know whether or not it works, right? I think we just have to be a little bit more strict on that and we'll be okay. But even then, I don't really care that much. It's only like a 1 to a 4. Usually if you're right on the line and I know guidance is coming, I'm either going to wait and say like, okay, you just passed, or I'm going to be like, guidance doesn't matter, you already passed, or like, guidance doesn't matter, you're not going to be able to pass. Like, I'm going to know. So.
You're a good DM. I played with DMs also that will say you've passed or failed really fast. So you
can't use guidance. Yeah.
I personally think guidance, you should probably limit it on what it's using. If it's something like, perception or investigation or something, or not investigation is different, but if it's like perception or, just something that's like happening just at it, you don't really decide for it to happen, it just happens. Like,
yeah, I understand what you mean. So like,
if you're like, I need to jump over a gap, then you can paddle back first.
Yeah, so things that you're planning to do, you can guidance, but things that are all of a sudden, like, roll a perception check real quick. Like, you can't get guidance on that. You didn't have enough intuition to be able to do it. Yeah.
I've got to cast it on them as well. I mean, I know it lasts up to a minute or something.
Yeah,
but I've got to cast it and have a
concentration. Yeah.
There is some limit to it, but
the only exception I can think for like a perception check is if you're like, we're about to go into this room, we don't know what's in there.
Yeah, actively looking.
I'm going to tap the rogue on the back, and he's going to go in and have a look.
Yeah. Or like, you know, on a night's watch when you're like out camping and the cleric and whoever are like taking watch together on their long rest, cast guidance. You're both looking out together.
They could just spam cast.
Again, though, it only lasts a minute.
Yeah.
So unless
it's that one check. Yeah.
If I'm going to sit there and spam it, though, you're well within your watch to say you're not resting. You're casting a spell every minute.
I don't think it should be used for night's watches.
Yeah.
So you don't know when the thing you're looking for is going to show up.
Well, that's the thing. You only roll like one perception check on the night's watch.
Well, I assumed it was more of an overarching how sleepy you are, how distracted you were.
Yeah, and that's why generally it's like.
This is why. If I'm DMing, I don't use a perception roll. That's what passive perception's for.
Yeah, but the problem I find with passive perception versus the watch for the night's watch is you're not passively perceiving, you're actively making sure that nothing is sneaking up on you.
If you have a passive perception of 17 and someone tries to stealth in with a 15, you hear that twig snap and wake up.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting there actively looking,
if you're asleep, you've got disadvantage, and it will go down to 12.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
what I'm saying,
that's a whole other conversation. Let's get back to the cantrips that we like. So, Hato, how about you? What's your favorite cantrip?
I really like Mage Hand, but I just love it even more if you've got that Arcane Trickster feat.
Yeah, it's good.
Where you can like
make it invisible
locks and stuff with it.
And make it invisible too. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So yeah, Mage Hand is probably my favorite.
Mage Hand. All right, how about Leela? Do you know enough cantrips to know what your favorite one is?
I do. I mean, I would say, Mage Hand is extremely useful, but depending on what class I'm playing, depending on the character I'm playing, I'm probably going to pick one of the elemental rays, coming down to the character. So I can't say it'd be Ray or Frost, but if I was playing a character that was cold inclined, it would be Ray or Frost, for example. You're probably surprised by this, but when it comes to D&D, I'm extremely confrontational. So I like to do damage. I like the ability to do whatever damage as much as possible. So
well, that's what I never know that I've had Frank, but Frank was never meant to be a combat character.
No.
I pictured him as a buff.
Yeah, a buffer.
A buffing and a healer. Yeah.
Okay, so my favorite cantrip, it's real hard because I really like Prestidigitation, but I actually think I like Vicious Mockery the best. Because I feel like this is a little bit ironic, but oh, I could hear myself for a second then. But the advantage that giving your opponent disadvantage provides, I feel, is huge.
It can be a lifesaver.
So like them saving, them and it not being like a dex based thing, it being like a wisdom based thing. Their wisdom save, and then them taking psychic damage, which is awesome because psychic damage is super hard to resist. And then providing disadvantage on their next attack roll, just in general, not necessarily against someone specific or against, they don't attack me, they have a disadvantage kind of thing like the fighter sort of stuff does. It doesn't do a lot of damage, so it's a little bit lacking in that department, but I feel like, providing disadvantage is massive. It's super massive, so...
Can I do some honorable mentions?
Yes, honorable mentions to Prestidigitation and like Light
Shillelagh.
And Shillelagh, and like Mending, obviously.
There's one from Explorer's Guide to Worldmount, if you count that as part of your campaign.
Yeah. They're all kind of in there, yeah.
There's only 2 subclasses that can learn it, and they're both from the same thing. I suppose it should just be a wizard cantrip in general, but if they fail a con save, it's a 30 feet range, one action. If they fail a con save, they take a D4 necrotic damage and fall prone.
That's pretty good too, yeah.
I was going to say, I think that's one thing I like in this edition better than the old editions. Well, there's two things that you remind me of. One, there is no divine and arcane magic anymore.
Yeah.
Which opens up for a lot more stats to be used.
Yep.
For different parts. Although, weirdly, most of them use charisma.
It's wisdom, charisma, intelligence are the three, like, spellcasting abilities.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I like that there really is a lot more saving throws.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Like, you can have to make a strength saving throw. So as a person who plays a caster, I like looking at going, oh, I'm fighting a wizard and he's casting spells. I'm not going to cast my spells at him because they've all got intelligence saves.
Yeah.
So there's one cantrip that I want to bring up, and I wouldn't say it's a favorite, but I want to say that I like that it's a cantrip. Spare the dying.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's really good.
It's good that it's a cantrip. If it was a first level spell or a second level spell, and the possibility that it would be expended, I think that would be devastating.
Well, spare the dying's like, you can basically do the same thing with a medicine check to stabilize someone, but the thing with spare the dying is you don't have to worry about failing.
Exactly.
You just do it.
I like that it's a cantrip, that's all.
Yeah, that it's a cantrip is huge because you can just cast it and you're done. Like, you don't run out of it. Doesn't matter what happens. Yeah.
Healer's Kick can do it as well.
Yeah, Healer's Kick can do the same thing. Yeah. But you got to have But you still have to roll. Do you still have to roll a medicine check with the Healer's Kit?
No, that's the actual purpose of a healer.
It just stabilizes them to 0.
I know Frank does it. All it does is.
No, but Frank's got the healer feat, so that's why.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you guys mentioned it because I had to go where you were talking about feats.
Yeah.
The thing you forget about feat is that there's a cost to get a feat.
Yeah.
You're not getting the +2 to a stat.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
which is massive.
It's actually way bigger for like spellcasters than it is for like melee combatants, because I feel like melee combatants do like maybe 1 more damage, or like they hit like on an extra 1, which is, it's pretty big. It's like another 5% chance that they get to hit or whatever. But
so they'll hit
for
5% more of the time.
But for spellcasters, it puts up their DC. It puts up their DC and it puts up their like spell attack bonus. So it's like way bigger for spellcasters to get that extra main stat, really.
But you've also got to look, though, the amount of times fighters hit.
Yeah, they hit far more often.
So no, I mean, because they will swing their sword.
Yeah, they get to swing the sword more often than you do get to cast a spell.
Twice around every round.
Yep, and you cast a spell once. So that's 1 DC that they have to make, and they can save against it.
An extra +1 DC to a hold person could be a game breaker.
Exactly.
Hitting someone once or twice.
Yeah.
But I mean, while you're doing this once for occasionally over a 10-round fight, I've done an additional 20 points of damage.
Yeah. I mean, it balances out, but
that's the equivalent of a good 2nd or 3rd level spell.
Yeah.
But that's where feats like Elven Accuracy again are really handy.
Yeah, like, if you can gain the advantage.
You don't raise that stat, but you still have a higher chance of hitting.
Yeah, that's why you have to pick your feat very wisely to determine what you're going to do.
That's one of the reasons I picked Elven Accuracy for my half-elf bard, was that it actually moved his charisma upper point with it from like 17 to 18.
Yeah, you still get the extra point.
If I had done the ASI thing, it wouldn't, in practicality, it wouldn't have made a difference. There's no difference between an 18 and a 19 if I put them both on the same one.
Yeah, if you've got uneven stats, getting that feat with the +1 bonus to your main stat is almost as good as getting an ability score increase to +1 in 2 stats, or +2 in 1 stat, depending on how you want to put them in. But
well, I mean, the benefit with Elven Accuracy is if you have something that gives you the ability to have advantage, then you can really use that feat.
Yeah.
Which is another one of the ones we can add to Lucky. With Lucky, we're up to 4 dice there. And if you're you can't get Elven Accuracy, it's a halving, but you're up to 4 dice. You got 2, plus the 1 for Elven Accuracy, plus Lucky.
This is just making me want to play. This is just making me, honestly, all this talk about the lucky stuff is just making me want to play a divination wizard with the lucky feat and be a halfling.
Menace.
It just makes me want to play it, like, just to be a freaking pain in the ass.
you've also got to be like level 8 to get the 2 feats.
Well, no, I think you get what's the halfling thing you get? Not that lucky one, but don't they just have another lucky thing?
The halfling thing you start with the halfling thing where they can reroll ones.
Yeah. At level 1 or whatever, just for being a halfling.
1.
Yeah.
But to get the lucky feat,
you gotta be level 4 at least.
Yeah, you gotta be at least level 4.
Yeah. So that's like that, and then the divination wizard you get at level 2, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You get the reroll stuff at level 2. So if you're level 4, you can at least get the 3 luck points plus the 2 divination rolls plus your halfling luck for the roll of a 1 somewhere on a saving throw or whatever. So like you've got at least 5 points to start with. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got at least 6 sort of lucky-ish roll things that you can do at level 4. Sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
Also sounds really frustrating.
You're basically playing a leprechaun at that point.
But yeah, you are. They're always after me, Lucky Charms. All right.
Irish accent.
Yeah. Okay, guys. It's after 12. We haven't really gone through all the spells, but that would just take absolutely forever. We mentioned some honorable mentions for cantrips and our favorite cantrips. We talked about feats for days. All of the feats, like more feats than an octopus has. And
feet.
we didn't shut up.
More feet than a centipede.
They're nothing but feet. We didn't get around to items or equipment. I feel like we will probably get around to that in the next podcast. So, thanks everybody, and we'll wave goodbye to the Twitch chat, and then we'll disconnect, and then we'll say goodbye to each other. Bye, Twitch chat. Bye, YouTube.
Twitch chat.
See you next podcast. Bye.